I call to order the regular meeting of the Board of Education of Community Unit District 201, today, Tuesday, April 13th, 2010. Roll call, please, Mrs. McMahon.
Ms. Casey?
Here.
Mr. Charleston?
Here.
Mrs. Charlton?
Here.
Ms. Kelly?
Here.
Mrs. Lubeck?
Here.
Mr. Price?
Here.
Mrs. Thomas?
Here. If we could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yeah. Is he doing it? Don't worry about it. I see it on over there.
Thank you all for coming. Before we begin, I thought I'd just take a minute in case you didn't see this. In the back of the room, there are two public packets. There's a public packet for the regular board meeting tonight. There's a public packet for the cost containment portion of the evening. What we're going to do is have our regular board meeting first. We'll take a 5-minute break and then have our regular board meeting, the public forum. If you are interested in speaking at the public comment section of the regular board meeting, we'll have you fill out the white card, or I will ask you if there's any other comments, and then you can fill this out afterwards. If you want to speak at the public forum, we are asking everybody to fill out their sign-up sheets on either side of the stage here. We need that for the minutes of the meeting and for the record keeping for the meeting, okay? So what we're going to do is we'll move forward right now with the regular portion of our meeting. And thank you all for coming. First item then is public comments. I have one card here. Not here yet? Okay, second time then? Okay. Are there any public comments at this time? If you could come on up here and state your name, please.
My name is Mary Kay Caporelli. As a result of a FOIA request that I put in last week, I was forwarded several lists, and from that list I compiled a spreadsheet sort of delineating where the spending is. I'd like to thank Maureen for sending me that information. I took the liberty to spread those numbers on one sheet, indicating the age of each building, the enrollment of that building, and the allocation of funds per building. Lastly, I indicate the dollars and percentages dedicated to athletics. It is crystal clear that there has been minimal concern for district-wide equity, district-wide need, district-wide desires, or district-wide interest. While I'm sure many promises have been made, and many have patiently been waiting their turn at the till, the only promise that you're obliged to keep is the promise each of you made to represent the entire district. The children that you represent deserve, first, an emotionally, psychologically, and physically safe environment in which to learn. Second, a robust academic program to give them the tools they need to deal with life. And lastly, an athletic experience in that order. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments, please? Mrs. Caporelli, would you make sure you fill out a white card at some point tonight? Get that to Mrs. McMahon. Any other public comments? First item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Are there any questions on the consent agenda? The chair will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented. Number 1, adoption of policies, and 2, appointment of school treasurer.
So moved. Second.
Roll call, please, Ms. McMahon.
Ms. Casey?
Yes.
Mr. Charleston?
Yes.
Mrs. Charlton?
Yes.
Ms. Kelly.
Yes.
Mrs. Lubeck.
Yes.
Mr. Price.
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas.
Yes.
We have a visitor here with us tonight, and if it's okay with the rest of the board, maybe we could go ahead and have Dr. Darlene Rossetti from the Regional Superintendent of DuPage come and speak. Is everybody okay with that? Okay, Dr. Rossetti, would you come up and...
Thank you.
I really appreciate the opportunity to be here, and I have a couple of things I just want to share with you. I know you have a busy agenda tonight, so I just want to share with you a little bit about our office, just perhaps give you a couple of updates, what's going on in the state, a little bit at the federal level, though I know your superintendent will be filling you in on that. But I did want you to know that tonight is my 38th board meeting, so I had a goal this year to attend at least one board meeting in all 42 school districts, so you're number 38, so I'm counting down. And I'm so appreciative when I started this off, it rain and snow and sleet and fog and everything else, so the sun was shining when I came and it was light out still, so I again appreciate the opportunity to be here. And most importantly, what I've been saying at all of the board meetings, and I think sometimes in these very, very difficult times, we forget the fact that there are some phenomenal things going on in education in DuPage County. It is truly an honor for me to serve as the regional superintendent when I'm in Springfield, and I will be going tomorrow morning in Springfield talking to our legislators about our funding situation. I am, of course, in one voice. The rest of you are, all of you are voices in regards to this. But, people still recognize DuPage County and the work that happens here as the premier county in the state of Illinois. And I think you need to know that. I think you and the teachers, in particular, need to really be, knowledgeable about that. You are called upon to write position papers, to sit at the table, to help direct policy, and certainly our voice is one that's going to be not just strong now, but continue to be strong, as particularly with the school funding crisis that we're seeing. So, but I did first and foremost want to tell you, thanks for all you do. Thank our teachers, our administrators, our board for all that you do on behalf of the children that that you serve. And again, I think overall we are asked to do things with less money, greater challenges, and more, and as I said, in higher and higher expectations as well. And the one thing that I am seeing consistently through this county, and I don't care what school district I am in, you continue to move forward. And I think that that's something that's very, very important. So again, just wanted to very much acknowledge that. The second thing, and I have shared with you a little bit of a packet about the Regional Office of Education. We certainly want to support you in every way that we can. One, I do see us as advocates, and one of the reasons why I'm going to Springfield, to make sure that our voice is heard up here in DuPage County. Sometimes, a lot of the action is down in the southern portion, and we need to make sure that what we need up here for our kids is also very important, and that our legislators need and know that as well. But our office is here to serve you, and that's something that's very important to us, and we value our relationship. And I just wanted to share with you a couple of partnerships that we have in place this year that we believe is done on your behalf through our steering committees and things that we've been advised to do. And I just want to share with you upcoming things for next year. We have started a business education coalition. We're talking now about academic readiness, career readiness, college ready. We want to make sure that our children continue to, meet the highest of standards, continue to move forward, and every child in this county meet his or her full potential. So with our business education coalition, we've been working very strongly with our business community. What can they assist us with doing? How can we be at the table together? We've not done that in the past as well as we're doing it right now, and so that's very exciting. We've set some goals together. How are we going to work together? How can we be on the same page? What can we learn from business? What can business learn from us on behalf of our children? So as that moves on, I know we'll be communicating more and more, and I'm happy to share that with our school board members as well. We have an initiative that we kicked off last week. It's with CASEL, the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning. It's the first partnership that CASEL has engaged in the state of Illinois. CASEL was instrumental in getting getting the social emotional learning standards and having Illinois be the first state in the nation where these standards, became the law. And we're looking for pilot sites, and we kicked this off, and I know that many districts were represented there, and we're looking to create really a local model that's going to become a national model. So you'll also be hearing more about that. Something that's very important to me personally, and it's our role, and I know District 201 has been very supportive of this in the past, and that we continue to move forward, and it's our role in creating what we call, we talk about career readiness and college readiness. I think we also have to think about civic readiness. Our children and, the future is theirs, and we need them to be the best citizens that they can be. So we have a partnership with the McCormick Foundation. We will continue to work in how can we best support our children in civic education as well as in other avenues. And again, the McCormick Foundation has been fabulous to us. You're educators, and I know that you're a part of this as well. And again, it's educating all children, and we have a gifted grant that we had received this year, and that was strictly to train teachers in DuPage County in new curriculum, and it's really some outstanding curriculum in gifted education. So how do we move our children forward in this arena? A lot of that will happen over the summer. We don't want to take teachers out of the classroom unnecessarily. Certainly I don't. We want to be directly responsible for that, so we'll be doing a lot of work over in the summer and networks with our gifted educators, learning from each other. We do have a new initiative, and we have some phenomenal people that will be involved in this. We have Dr. Bennett Leventhal he was from the University of Illinois at Chicago. He's now in New York, doing work in New York, both internationally and nationally. And we're going to create here in DuPage County an anti-bullying policy. We really need to create a best practice. And there's so much going on, as you all know, and nationally. And we've come to the table with our state's attorney, with Dr. Leventhal, with other, premier educators and researchers, and say, what is it that we can do to make sure that we have the best policies, the best practices, the best training, in the world, so that you can benchmark what you're doing against it, and you can look at adapting it, adopting it, et cetera, et cetera. And we'll be looking for volunteers. So to be in our committee. So I hope I can count on District 201 to be at the table. We recently wrote with our health department a $10 million grant. It's called our Forward Initiative, and $10 million is to assist school districts with mini grants, and for you all to look at how you can sustain current health and wellness initiatives that you may have, or if you would like to start new health and wellness initiative. It's really part of the big national picture, and many of you have heard about Mrs. Obama and this whole issue with obesity, but it's really trying to look at how can we make sure that our children become the healthiest children and become that healthy generation, as opposed to what we're seeing as a path that may not be as good for them. And we're working, and always what's on your mind is school safety. As much as academic achievement and moving all children forward is important, I know that you're always looking at school safety. And recently we've come into a partnership with the FBI here in DuPage County, and they continue to feed us information about how can we make sure our schools are safe, and we continue to push that forward to our superintendents, and pleased with the work that they've been doing. On April 21st, I'm going to be meeting with all the superintendents, and in the past I've always said, here's what we can do for you. On April 21st, we're going to say, what is it that you need from us that we can help you with? So we're really going to be good listeners and continue to work with and see what we can do to support all of the good work that you are doing. Two other things I just want to mention to you, and I think that your superintendent will update you better than I can on this, but we know that Illinois lost the Race to the Top money in this first round. They are applying again for the Race to the Top money. There really is a lot at stake with this. I met last week with Superintendent Cook, And he really could use for this state, education-wise, the $500 million that's on the table. So, he has asked all of the regional superintendents, I'm sure he's going to ask your superintendent, to, if you have not signed on to the Race to the Top, he certainly wants to encourage every school district in Illinois. I know that's a local decision, and you all have to decide on that, but that's something that is going to be around, for a while. And then I'm going to close, but I want to say one thing before I close. We also will be looking at this year with the reauthorization of the Elementary Secondary Education Act, and I just want to give this one strong message. Let's make sure that DuPage voice is at the table. With federal requirements coming down, and I see sometimes a loss of local control, I really think our voice is absolutely critical. I know that your superintendent was at the table when we met with the U.S. Department of Education. He had a lot of great advice for the folks that came there from the federal level, and so I know that they hear us here in DuPage, and I think that's really important. So as this reauthorization comes down, we need, again, to just keep pushing. What do our children need? What do our school needs? What do our communities need that's going to be best for our children? And finally, and I just want to close with this, and I close with this with every school board that I've met, and I truly do believe this is my belief system. I truly do believe that in this county, no other state, no other nation will ever out-educate our children, and that's largely because of the work that happens in our schools with the support of our communities. So thank you again for all that you do, and again, if we can be of service to you, that's what we're here for. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Rossetti, thank you for coming. Did you say you're going to Springfield tomorrow? Can you bring a check back with you? Okay, thank you. Next item on the agenda is the superintendent's report.
The first thing that's there is the list of all of the cost containment items that were articulated over the past number of meetings, and where staff had concerns, suggestions, thoughts they wanted to share with you. Those are included on those other items, which I believe are also included in the other public packet as well for the audience. On the good news side, we again heard from the Association of School Business Officials that we received now for the fourth year in a row a Certificate of Excellence for Financial Reporting, this one for 2009. So then the next process will be to apply for the one for 2010. But, Maureen Jones does a great amount of work to make sure that we continue to get this recognition. And actually, not very many school districts do. And so, again, it shows that, we do a very good job of sharing accurate, complete information with the community about our finances.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Congratulations, Maureen.
Congratulations.
As Dr. Rossetti spoke about a minute ago, the state of Illinois did not get funding through the Race to the Top initiative from the federal government. The state board has already been back to us to say, what do we need to do to convince the boards that didn't sign the memos of understanding to participate in that grant process? What do they need to do to get the districts to agree to that? So you'll probably hear more from that when the state board comes back to us and asks formally for us to participate.
So to recall that a couple of the primary concerns that we had, one was that the mandates included in what we would have to do may have been more costly than the dollars that may have been available to cover those.
Yes.
That was one.
And the other piece is it just was not well articulated what those mandates would be. So,
And a concern about the ongoing nature of the mandates as well, even after the
Yes.
funds were dispersed.
and there's a question about how much money the district would really obtain. So, so we'll see. When they solicit it, a response, I'll bring that back to the board again. All right. The other thing from a state standpoint, just to be aware that We did hear from the Capital Construction Board today that they're saying that we are going to get our school construction grant from 2002, and it's actually $1,217,000. That should be available in the next 2 to 4 weeks, theoretically. We'd have 2 years from the time we get the money to commit to the projects, and then 5 years to complete the projects.
So they're giving us 2 years to identify the projects?
Up to 2 years.
Up to 2 years to identify new
If
projects?
you identified them today, no. And that's a question ultimately that'll have to be worked out with the Capital Construction Board. Most of the money was earmarked to do accessibility work at Manning and South.
Yep.
Right. In talking with them today, they really don't have a problem making that Manning and Miller. But the scope of those projects has to be defined, and again, there's a local share that has to be provided as well. So that's all has to be done, and decided, and effectively, none of that work will be able to be done this summer because, the engineering and architectural work that would need to be done to do that hasn't been done. We've done some very preliminary work with Steve Cashman on elevators at both buildings, but again, this ties to a later agenda item. The first thing the board needs to really decide is what, long-term they want to do with the facilities and addressing the facilities report that the board received last June to make some, general direction kind of guidance to the staff so we can determine, what are our next steps. Because they're very different depending upon how the recommendations from the facilities committee are addressed.
So when did they say, or did they say when they expected to have the rules related to scope and how?
Rules already exist. There'll have to be
Okay.
some sort of negotiation process as far as how exactly you're going to use that money. But again, it still has to be tied to the general pieces of accessibility in buildings that are functionally 100 years old. So the money really is not going to be able to be used to do the junior high or high school in any, substantive way.
When you say accessibility, does that covers like ADA compliance and things like
Yes.
that?
And we're still responsible then for another 1.2 million.
Actually, 2.4.
Oh, so that's.
I believe it's a 2 to 1.
Oh, it's 2 to 1.
Yep.
And
I thought it went
see,
the other way initially.
No, I would. That'd be nice.
I guess the rules, in terms of what counts as matching dollars are going to be useful there.
Well,
Especially
it'd be
if
an
you can-
issue of negotiating what
Especially
those
if-
matches are.
Especially if you can spend them over 5 years, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, but the scope of all the projects have to be identified.
No, I know,
You get-
but in terms of the flow of dollars, the 2 to 1
Right.
thing, like, I don't want to, I'd hate to hear that I have to be in a position to have $2.4 million in the bank today
No.
to cover it.
No.
Okay.
You have to just spend it during the course of the projects.
So we can do it project by project? Is that what you're saying in terms of the 2 to 1?
Yes. No, I mean, it's not project by project, it'll be the scope of the entire set of projects that are agreed to. We'll have to spend $2 for every dollar that
Sure.
we get from the federal government, or from the state in this case, excuse me.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Music Superstate, IHSA, again, accepted the WHS band into the A division for Superstate, so they'll get the opportunity to perform later this spring at the University of Illinois, Champaign. So again, that's for the school to be chosen 2 years in a row, it's a blind process, so it's really about nothing except the quality of the band. That's again a huge accomplishment for the music department and for the band here at the high school. Right. The other thing, I need to make you aware of a couple of things. You have in the orange folder handbook changes that the board would be asked to approve at the end of this month. So you normally get them now, so you have a couple of extra weeks to go through them. If you have any questions about any of them, please direct them directly to either myself or Steve Carr. And then you also have a list of items from a scheduling standpoint. I believe that's the first thing in your packet. That right now, this administrative team is just kind of waiting on because we can't make decisions for next year until we have decisions about the budget. So I just want you to be aware of what those are. And then you also have an email, actually, that I was asked to share with the board regarding one citizen's thoughts on cost containment because they were unable to be here to share them with the board directly tonight. That's all I have.
One item, just for clarification, in the superintendent's report, it says in our packet that these lists were created by the board. I don't think the board created any lists. I think we've had discussions. But the sheets that are in our packet are, in fact, brought to us tonight. They're in the public packet, comments at the end. But they were not created by the board. The next item on the agenda, review of capital projects lists for 2010 to 2011. It does state in here, and I will, I guess, start this because I did request that this be put in our board packets. This came up last time and, at the last meeting, and Maureen Jones suggested that we have a board committee meeting. Thank you for that, Maureen. And I asked to have this list be brought to the board so we can discuss this project list. And for understanding purposes, Maureen, tell me if I'm stating this wrong at all. The district got a bond in 2007, and then a project list was created for projects. Some are life safety, some are capital projects. So what we have in front of us now is what are the projects that are up for the year 2010-11 school year and the 2011 school year as well, those 2 school years. My request to have this brought to the board was to discuss this and find out if this is where we want to proceed as a board in terms of these items. And if we at all want to look at some of these items in light of the fact that the economy is much different than it was in 2007. So, in fact, I did ask to have this brought to us. I in no means want to step on the toes of the Ms. Lubeck and Ms. Thomas who are on the committee, but I just wanted to say that I did ask to have this brought to the table. So.
My understanding, though, Marie, at the meeting was the only item left that was for the under discussion was regarding the seating here in the auditorium. The other items were going to go back to Mr. Mayoris and Mrs. Jones for re-review to see if there was any additional items to add to it. And as far as I know, they haven't met us yet.
Mike provided me with a list today, so we'll go over it in the next committee meeting, which we need to schedule still. And we'll look at revising the list, revising the current list. We've already gone forward with the bid packages on the 3 main projects for 10-11, and the auditorium seating is the only one that's held up right now. Mr. Cashman is in the audience if we have any questions regarding any of them right now. If not, I can always ask for his attendance at the next committee meeting to discuss the projects in more detail. But that's how we would usually handle it.
Yeah, just to clarify, sort of the way this list was developed, in 2005, out of the facilities and finance piece of the strategic plan, historically this district set aside, X amount of money every year to spend on facilities projects, but really didn't work through a coherent long-term plan to do that, right? So one of the things that came out of that strategic plan was the development of sort of a 5-year projects list, knowing that while those projects were addressed, there were some larger issues that were going to have to be addressed, and ultimately that became the facilities committee that met over about 18 months to really look long-term, big picture at what the facilities needs for the district were going to be over the next 15 years, right? So these projects, as they were put together, were a combination of things that were required for life safety and were required just from a standpoint of either, administrative maintenance facilities team saying these are issues that need to be addressed for the functionality of the buildings in the district. After those lists were created, at that point, the district then, after they had these lists, determined how much they were going to sell bonds for in both life safety and working cash. The working cash bonds to do the other capital projects that couldn't be addressed within the scope of life safety. All right. So, there have been minor modifications to this list every year based on the input from the facilities staff, mostly Mike Mioris, the other head custodians, and the principals, as far as what issues had to be done. The list that Mike has drafted that he shared with Maureen really addresses the next set of issues that need to be addressed from 2012 on. There's really nothing on that list that has to be done immediately besides beyond what's already been identified. And so the listed items that you see before you are still the recommendations from the staff and the district's architect as far as the things that need to be addressed now. Clearly, the board could choose not to do some of these things, but none of these things are, nice to have. For the most part, these are, things that are required in order to make sure that, preventative maintenance is done in such a way that some of these buildings literally don't start to fall apart. All right, so that's sort of where we are, how we got to these lists, and then ultimately we sold bonds to do this. All right, you also have in front of you the Facilities Committee recommendations that were presented to the board last June, and really that's the next step. The board needs to determine how are they going to address the long-term district needs, because that's important when Maureen and Mike and others go back to put together a list of facilities projects. There's a big difference between what projects you're going to do if you're going to take the approach of maintaining the current buildings as opposed to if you're going to look at potentially replacing some of the buildings. And so those conversations, I think, really have to happen first before you're going to be able to have any decent plan to replace the current 5-year plan as it gets to the end of its natural life.
My questions, just to be clear, are not about life safety issues. My concerns are more of what is on this list, particularly in front of us, in terms of items that I'm asking the board if this is where we want to spend our money. For instance, $10,000 on a spectator fence in the baseball field, and equipment storage under the grandstands, and sports banners on the gym walls to the tune of $5,000, $10,000, and $8,000. And to me, first of all, I really want to thank Mike Mioris for doing this work. What I'm doing is I'm asking if this board who's going to approve these funds, if we think that this is where we still want to go on these projects. I see next year on this project list, there is a removing the tennis courts for a fee of $50,000, a football scoreboard for $20,000, and I guess what I'm saying is if, when I look at the Facilities Committee report, one of the things that has been discussed at length is, putting walls and windows in the high school. So my question was, could we use some of this $2.8 million towards projects like that? That's my question. Because I'm hearing, I did find this original list back in the information that was provided to the board in April of 2009 when we were seated, but I didn't really understand where this came from, so I definitely want to thank Maureen for explaining that. My question was, in this economy, we don't have a lot of money, and is there another place we could put this money? And that's what I'm asking the board. If we think that this list as it currently stands is flexible at all to move into areas that we might need. And I totally agree. I think we do need to start having that discussion about what are we going to do with our buildings, because I think there's a need in some of our buildings that aren't addressed here. So that's why I asked to have this brought to the board. And again, I want to thank Mike Mioris for the work that he has put into this, and in no way do I want this to be construed as a criticism of this document. I'm asking this current board if we want to look at these projects.
Question, the working, the money that's in working cash, which was derived from the bond issue of 2007, does it have what's the fuse on that in terms of when do we have to spend it by?
It turns out there's no fuse. You have to make a concerted effort to spend it in the first 3 years. We've obviously already passed
3 years?
that.
3 years from
3 years.
issuance of the bonds, or 3
Yes.
years from the first full payment?
3 years from issuance of the bonds. However, if you're not able to do that, it's okay because we're what's called a small issuer exemption, because we're under $10 million. So we're okay.
So we have an
Excuse me?
an open-ended date on that then? You don't have to go to 5 years, you could go to,
I wouldn't recommend an open-ended date.
okay, that's,
Yeah.
just looking for clarity.
And so the remaining, right now, there's about, how much is in that working cash fund right now?
2.8 million.
2.8 million. So, and that's a fixed amount. No dollars get added to that in our case. We're not adding dollars to working cash. As we spend it out
The
of
only thing
out of capital projects, we take working cash and put it to work in capital
The
projects.
add is interest on investments, which is going to be really nominal right now.
So the money's there, and I mean it's just a question of spending it, allocating it, and prioritizing the capital projects that we need to do over the course of the next 2 to 3 to 4 years. Is that fair?
And the 2.8 million is where we stand right now. Doesn't
Yeah.
include the projects that we've already bid for this summer.
In addition to that, we're going to get 1.2 million, it sounds like, in a couple weeks.
Then we'll have access to it.
Access
We
to
won't
it.
get it until we've committed to the projects.
Okay. So
They don't
it's-
pay us ahead of time.
So it's more of a commitment than a funding?
Correct.
Okay. So we would have to draw on the commitment based on identified projects.
You get 45% of the money once you've bid the projects and started that process.
Okay. And you mentioned that there's a 2-to-1 local match on that as well?
Correct.
Okay. It feels to me like Kathy and Diane ought to, between the 2007 list, which is still eminently valid, the priorities and the stuff that came out of the Facilities Committee recommendations from 2009, and incorporating this notion that we have what appears to be, good news about the capital bond money. We ought to revisit, what our projects look like for the next couple of years, and then come back to the board with a list. It feels like to me.
And we still haven't made a date, because we just got the information.
So are
In the
you,
meantime, there's 2010 projects, though.
okay, so are you saying that the Facilities Committee basically agreed with the list of priorities, or?
We wanted to kind of regroup a little bit and had gone back to Mr. Mayor's to see if there was any additional things that had kind of a timer on them or something that needed priority on it that we weren't aware of from this current list. So Mrs. Jones had just said that he just recently got the list. We have not met to discuss that
You have not met?
since he created this additional, correct. But it's still on the list, still, that has gone out to, the seats went out to, we had started a process.
Well, here's the issue on the seats. We were about, 30 seconds from going out to bid on the seats when I emailed Mr. Cashman and told him to pull the bid. So the very next day from our meeting, we were going to go to bid for those seats. So what that means is that we've already spent the time to get the bid specs together, to do the engineering on the project, draw up the plans, all of that. We've already spent the time and the money to get that together. So that it was roughly about $14,000, if my memory is serving me correctly. And Steve's shaking his head, so that's yes. So that if we decide not to go out to bid, not that that's wasted money in case we do that project
No,
in the
because you
future.
could always do that project later.
Right. But that we've already paid for that part of the project.
And that's which project?
The auditorium
Seats.
seats, right here.
These auditorium seats from 1976.
And we did have Larson Equipment Company, which is a company that does the seating, look into refurbishing them instead of replacing them, and it's actually more expensive to refurbish them. So, believe it or not, it's $15 more a seat by his estimate.
I guess my initial concern is Whereas I do think it's nice to have better seats. I guess I would say we're sitting here at a public forum, and one of the things that I'm hoping that we're going to get from the public forum is the feedback from the community as to where we want to spend our money.
Remember that this is not money we can spend on salaries.
I
This is money
understand
that
that.
has to go to capital
Thank you.
projects.
I absolutely understand that. I'm not saying it's a very different bucket of money. But what I'm saying is I am, as a board member, have to be fiscally responsible, and I wonder if this is the best use of our money. I'm not saying in any way, shape, or form that we shouldn't have new auditorium seats. I'm asking this board to ask the questions, do we want to spend $200,000 on new seats in the auditorium? Do we want to spend $10,000 on a baseball fence? I don't know. I just think that maybe we have other capital projects that we can look at. That's what I'm asking. And in no way do I want that to be perceived as anything negative to Mr. Mayoris for his work. I'm just saying the times are different than they were in 2007. And I would say, I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with this, that there is anything wrong with this list inherently. What I'm asking is, before these bids go out, if we could discuss, $200,000 to me seems like a lot of money. And I'm wondering if there's any chance that these seats can last us another year or so.
Well,
People all
you know,
over are doing with less.
I did come later last week to come and take a look at the seats and talked with Mr. Carr. He had advised me that before every graduation, he and two other gentlemen come in and sit on every one of these seats because the seats have failed when people have sat in them. And there is a risk of somebody being injured because of that. The other problem is the parts, because the chairs are so old, no longer exist. So for us to try to MacGyver them together is falling apart. We don't have that ability anymore. So if we don't spend the money today or soon, the entire district uses this auditorium for one function or another, from preschool all the way to senior. This isn't like it's specifically just the high school situation. I think it's an important amount of money, an important project to go forward on.
I would actually personally just observe that going to bid brings us no harm. And so I would personally be in favor of sending the bid specs out, getting those bids. It could come back at 150 or something like that. But at that point, if the facilities committee has had a chance to meet, talk about priorities, at that point we can dovetail those two conversations about a decision about whether or not to go forward based on an actual bid in hand. And that way we know what the number is. And the contractor is prepared to move if it's something we want to do. But given the work, to prepare the bid specs, I mean, I think we ought to go get the bids and see.
Now is
what comes
also,
back.
it's bid season.
Yeah.
So you want to catch these contractors before they've got their summer planned already, and there's a lead time on the chairs just like any other project. So I would agree with Dan that going out to bid does no harm at this point.
Again, I'll say,
And if I could just comment, I would just like to say that through the Facilities Committee, which had community members on the committee, we did get some public input that way. And also because we already spent $14,000 into the project, it seems like it would be fiscally responsible to move forward on the project. And because it sounds like it is a real safety issue, that is another compelling reason to move forward with it. So I would be in favor of moving forward for all those reasons.
I guess my question is, we're getting this 1.2 million, and then we have to put 2 to 1 to it, so we basically got pretty close to 2 to 1 in our working cash. So if we spend the working cash money on all these other projects, where are we going to get the money to maximize our use of the 1.2 million we're slated to get?
One way that we can get the money is once these bonds are sold off, which will be the 2012 levy, we go back out and issue more bonds. These bonds were sold under what's called the debt service extension base, and I do not want to bore the audience with an explanation of what that is, but it's really based on your payments back to your bondholders, and as long as you leave that payment the same, you can issue non-referendum debt. So this district has historically always reissued debt as soon as the old debt comes off the books. That is one way that we could get that money, and that is part of the reason that we came up with the $6.9 million that we came up to begin with, was what was afforded to us underneath the debt service extension base. So that is always an option in a few years to get our portion of that.
1.2 will still be there to access it?
From what Dr. Ball is telling me, yeah, we have a few
For
years.
2 years. So you don't have to spend dime one until basically April of 2012.
And then you have 5 years to actually do the projects beyond that.
Correct, once you've committed to them.
So, I mean, one of the other ways to...
Well, 3 years.
3 years?
Beyond
Okay, oh,
that,
so it's 5 total?
Yes.
Okay. So one of the other ways is basically just to, if, in out years, in future years, to the extent that there are operating dollars available in the O&M budget, you can match some of those capital bond money with operating, future year operating O&M money as well. So given that there's time to implement those projects, so long as there's time, there's an opportunity to accumulate money or to find money to do those matches. Again, for me, it's not so much this question of, am I in favor of the seats? It's really just let's get the bid. Let's let Diane and Kathy and Mike and Maureen and those guys do their work, and then once we have a bid and some feedback, we'll make a decision.
I guess as just one board member, I can't get my head around $40,000 on a baseball field and football scoreboards and things when we're a unit district, we have needs. I'm not saying that there aren't needs, and there aren't, and I just really struggle with that. I really struggle with the spending of that.
And Marie, we can get more detail. I know that the detail that's in these lists is pretty limited. It's a very short project description. We can get more detail as to the reasoning behind asking for those things to begin with and the scope of the project, and some things you may not realize might be a safety issue. We can definitely do that in the committee level.
That's a good point, Maureen, and thank you for that, because those specific projects that I'm talking about are not identified as life safety projects. So if there is something else...
There's a very big difference between a life safety project and just a safety issue. The life safety is an actual code that things have to adhere to, and if they don't, then they're labeled as a life safety project. So if we just feel that the fencing at the baseball field was necessary so people don't get hit with balls, that's not necessarily a life safety issue, but could be a safety issue.
And I guess the bigger question too is I have seen this and looked at the facilities committee report, and the facilities committee report has quite a number of things on there, and it would be really good to actually start talking about these issues that are on here. Hopefully that will be brought to some sort of a plan or something soon to talk about some of the buildings that are not allocated to receive any of these funds. It would be a good thing to start talking about the elementary schools, because there's a need there. And I, for one, feel we should be addressing that. We should be looking at that. Does that make sense?
When we meet, we can discuss
Absolutely.
things on the facility committee and, as Dan has suggested, and go forward at the committee level, and be happy to bring that forward.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I have one other question on the, for Manning, it says under life safety, it says fire alarm system upgrades, and then it says beyond. So was that an identified project that we sold money for and aren't spending it, or?
I'll look to the audience right now at Mike.
Oh, if you take anything that's listed as beyond, it means we did not sell bonds for. And so, for instance, some of the things, I'm looking for the list with Manning real quick here.
First item on the
page.
list, $50,000.
Ongoing maintenance, and it's going to cost us about $155,000 to do that.
He's asking about the top line.
The first line?
Yeah.
It's, again, both of them. There's actually,
If you look at that, it's actually listed twice, Joel, so that just might be a typo. It's listed under life safety and then
modernize
architect.
$155,000 under the architect recommendations, so.
Steve, you're looking at the wrong list. Manning.
No, I'm on Manning.
No, he's on me.
Yeah. There's a
the first item.
$50,000 item at the top, under life safety required. And then there's 155 under architect recommended projects. All right, in addition to the above, so the recommendation from the architect was not just to make the updates necessary to meet life safety code, but to replace the entire system because of its age. And if I remember correctly, there's some issues occasionally with, again, replacement parts, et cetera, because these systems are starting to age and need to be replaced. And one of the issues with this is, with Manning particularly, before we put $160,000 into, a fire alarm system, we want to make sure the board has made a decision that they want to retain Manning for the foreseeable future, as opposed to if they decide they were going to, replace the building in 2015, then it's not necessary potentially for us to make those changes now.
So ultimately, some of these questions, I think, would be well addressed by the upcoming strategic plan. You'll get a lot of community input and
That's
teacher
one way of
input
doing
and-
it. But it's the board, really before there's any more work on identifying individual facilities projects, and I've said this a couple of times, the board needs to make some decisions as far as long-term, what do they want to do with the buildings? Are they going to continue to, we have 2 buildings in the district that are almost 100 years old, right? Are we going to retain those buildings? Or are we going to continue to, work to just try to bring them up to code? And I think, our architects, the other people who've been involved, the engineers, will tell you it'll cost as much just to bring them up to code and still have 100-year-old buildings with relatively small classrooms and some of the other disadvantages of old buildings, or replace them. And once that decision is made, then the staff can go back and articulate sort of an order of priority for projects that need to be done. But that more core decision has to be made first.
But I think what Joel's saying is, wouldn't that be a great outplacement of the strategic plan? How will the board just decide whether to go one or the other?
Well, the board has already, for 18 months prior to June 2009, a group of board members, community members met, went through every building, kicked the tires, basically went through the bowels of every building. And they've come up with a set of recommendations that the board now has to review and act on. It doesn't make sense to go through the whole, gathering of information process again. That's already been done at a fairly significant cost, both personnel and capital.
No, my question specifically is you said that the board has to decide
Yes.
what they're going to do with the Manning building. And I'm just saying, is it being suggested that we just have to decide whether we're going to maintain it or build a new one?
No, what was
That's what
suggested
I'm-
in the committee, honestly, was to actually do the engineering work behind it and see how much it would cost us to rebuild versus retrofit. And that was one of the recommendations on the committee plan.
Yes.
And we haven't been instructed yet to go forth and do that.
Right.
So I think
And obviously that costs money too.
Because that will cost architect fees, without a doubt. I think that is probably the first step, not just to make the decision whether or not to knock Manning down, but basically whether or not to spend the architect fees to determine how much it would cost us to do all the things, to bring things up to code. That we need some instruction or some guidance on that.
Okay,
I think in the meantime, though, we have to, pay attention to what our staff is recommending to maintain the buildings at some level.
absolutely,
We
absolutely.
just can't let them go into disrepair while we're deciding what to do.
And Kathy, that is exactly why I'm saying I struggle with scoreboards and baseball fences, because of that reason.
Right, well, then we
That's
just
my
need to, we
concern.
need to find out, what the reason behind the recommendation was.
That's exactly, yes.
And having led the strategic plan committee strand that was guided towards finance and facilities, I will tell you that committee spent a lot more time on finance than on facilities. And I think that both of those issues right now are huge for this district. So to assign such detailed work to what's supposed to be a more goal-oriented planning committee, I think when we already met for 18 months to come up with the plan that we came up with would be pretty duplicative and very detailed, and probably far more detailed than that group would get into.
Okay, at the risk of being hung right here on stage, how do we go about doing this? Finding out what do we want to do with this? What do we need to do for this?
I think, personally, again, I take it back to Kathy and Diane's committee. Take, in particular, the June 2009 recommendations that were 18 months in the making with 20-plus people, community members, staff, and others at that committee. And that committee includes Mike Mayoris and Maureen and Dr. Ball and
Jew.
yeah, well, this committee did, but that committee doesn't. Let them sort through what they think the right recommendations are for the board in terms of a strategic statement, long-term strategic statement that says we should go forward, for instance, with J.T. Manning, with investigating the relative cost to renovate or replace Manning School. At Miller, we should look at constructing an addition in some way to create a secure ground floor principal's office. At the junior high, there's really just a couple things, but at the senior high, the issue is, do we instruct the administration to work with Steve Cashman to figure out costs associated with walls and windows and the HVAC work and all the other stuff that's going to go into that. So I think that ultimately is what I'd like to see come out of their committee. And then we can, dovetail that into a list of projects, this list plus whatever other items you guys come up with. And then, we state where we want to go, and then we go.
How do we incorporate that into, we're talking about possibly exploring grade centers. So,
It's a very good question.
that may change what you want to do with your buildings all the way around.
Although,
That's going to have very little impact really on the buildings themselves. There are some minor differences you might want to make to the buildings if you were going to modify one to be K2 and one to be 3.5, but you're not going to have any significant differences between those two buildings, whether they're K5 or 2, or 3.5 or K2.
my recollection from that work, Mr. Cashman, was a lot of the educational spaces, especially at the elementary level, were fairly standardized. There were larger room footprints for the smaller grades and perhaps smaller room footprints for the 3 through 5 type grades. But other than that, the breakout spaces that we talked about were very similar. This notions of secure entrances and access and ingress and egress and things like that were all very, very similar. So I think they'd be very similar. And I see you shaking your head yes. So I'll save you the embarrassment of making you come up here and say that.
And
Go ahead.
just quickly, the previous board had mentioned at one point doing something for our district students using the South building as far as early education, and that might be something that might be worth revisiting in the scope of reviewing grade centers and what we want out of our buildings. And I think we don't even know if it's going to be leased for next year. Is that correct?
Oh, it's going to be leased. Yeah.
Is it leased?
Yes.
The same half as what's leased now, yes.
So they didn't want to take any new space. They're going to take the existing space.
Take the existing
Okay.
space, yes.
But that question of looking at the early childhood center, that clearly is one of the recommendations that the facilities committee made. Quick question: well, we'll talk about that later.
But for the sake of this meeting being a public forum as well, could we move on to decide to go to bid on the
I wanted to make
auditorium
sure we were
seats,
clear on
or
that.
not to go to bid?
I think we should go to bid.
Go to bid.
Yes.
And I'd like to see us go to bid as well.
Go to bed.
I'll abstain. What about the rest of the items on 2010 then?
That's going to go back to the committee.
That's going to go back to the committee. Okay.
At this point, I think I agree with Diane that we should move on from this discussion. If
Okay,
everybody
so we're going to
else
go back
has
to
said
committee on
what
those.
they-
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. Board reports.
I have something from IASB, just a reminder that position statements are to be submitted by June 23rd. So if we as a board want to come up with any amendments to existing positions or reaffirm existing positions or belief statements or introduce anything for next year's Tri-I conference and the delegates meeting, that has to be turned into IASB by June 23rd. We can talk about that another time. I just wanted to plant the seed.
Okay, I'll go ahead, just hopefully brief, try to be. I don't know how many of you saw in the Suburban Life paper, there was an article about Mrs. Corwin, and I'll just read a small excerpt. It says, Mrs. Corwin has been with the Community Unit School District 201 since 1990 and was recognized last month at the Westmont Community Recognition Awards with the Westmont Rotaries Club Paul Harris Fellowship Award. And she was recognized for her work in organizing the Rotary Club's Helping Hands program, which provides underprivileged District 201 families with basic needs. And just as a note, the Paul Harris Fellowship Award is the highest award that the Rotary offers, so congratulations to her. I have a couple of additional comments. I know I talked about it last meeting about the nursing position, but I just wanted to talk about certification just for a moment, and I have some comments I'll add. As a medical professional, I've supervised many certified and non-certified employees during my career in laboratory medicine. My professional opinion and experience concerning medical certification is as follows, and I believe this is applicable to the certified school nurse position. As a supervisor, I always attempt to hire and retain certified medical laboratorians. They are specifically trained in particular subspecialty of medicine and are not considered generalists. They are more enthusiastic and display a genuine passion for their profession. They are more receptive to and understand the importance of continuing education. The quality of their work is consistently of higher caliber. They are better able to work independently and better equipped to train less experienced personnel. They understand the critical role their career plays in patient care and don't view their career as just a job. And they understand the importance of procedure, attention to detail, and quality control. Certification is not just a piece of paper. I believe it represents the best in medical services for our students. And with that, I just will pass out to my fellow board members a spreadsheet I put together concerning the salary information of the budget item concerning the replacing the certified school nurse with 2 hourly school nurses. And Maureen provided me a lot of this information, so thank you for that. I like spreadsheets because you can tweak them and see what differences occur in your tabulations. But the first sheet that's here is a tabulation based on hiring 2 hourly nurses compared to the cost of the certified school nurse. And I included such things as the average number of hours they work per year, overtime based on actual hours that our nursing staff put in 08 and 09, and the hourly pay at 3 different pay levels, low, medium, and upper pay range. And I calculated in overtime, and then I added in the 0.2 certified nurse salary because that's going to play into the total cost. And medical insurance at the single rate, which is what I guess a new employee is eligible for, or a new nurse would be eligible for. As you can see from the front page, if we hire 2 nurses at the lowest pay rate, the budget savings is projected at $25,000. However, if we end up hiring 2 nurses at the upper pay range, the budget savings are non-existent. In fact, we spend $3,000 more than we're currently spending now. On the second page, I thought it was important to kind of weigh what happens when the 2 positions become eligible for full family medical benefits. And as you can see here, the mid-pay of the school nurse, the 2 positions, proposed positions, would cost $5,000 more, and if we happen to hire 2 nurses at the upper pay range, it would cost almost $20,000 more to make this change. And so I wanted to make sure that we understood where this $46,000 came from, and I was not able to generate it in this comparison that I made, but I guess there's some extra salary from a secretarial position that is also lumped into this $46,000 savings, that if you use the nurses, you would also eliminate a secretarial position. So I'm not quite sure why that fits in the way it does. Like I said, the maximum savings I came up with was $25,000. And I just wanted to mention that the numbers I used here were from the 0809 WESPA contract, so those are likely to change, and the savings will actually change based on that and not realize as much savings as we thought, even on a spreadsheet such as this. But I just wanted to provide it to you so you could look at the numbers yourself and ask questions about it. If anybody wants a copy of it, I'd be happy to provide you with. It's just a simple spreadsheet. There's nothing secret on here.
Did you share this with Maureen ahead of time?
I did not.
Okay, Maureen, would you
I'm
take
not
a look
prepared
at
to answer
this?
questions on it. I just saw it 5
Yeah,
minutes
well,
ago.
when you get a chance, would you look through this and check it out? Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Any other items? Okay, I have this one card that I got. Do we want to do this now or the public forum? Public comments?
Perhaps.
Adam? You are here, okay. Did you want to speak? Is this to the meeting or the cost containment? More budget. Do you, come on up, come on up. Adam, and if you could state your name, please.
My name's Evan Cremio. I'm the executive director of Westmont Swim Club. We're very fortunate to rent out the pool during after-school hours. And I know that the pool is like on the budget, on the chopping block every year for budgets. And I had a quick proposal. And let's see if I can hand this out to you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, I'm some coach, not a teacher. I'm not using that.
Thank you.
And then the second one is just kind of a finance analysis that I was given by, just so you can kind of see what I'm talking about.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I know your time is valuable, so I'll make this quick. My proposal is trying to come up with a way to save you guys money on pool costs without losing any of the programs. I'm kind of biased to swimming. Grew up swimming, swam in college. Thought it was one of the biggest contributors of my success in college academics. Teaches you commitment, team play, being able to prioritize what you need to do, organization. And therefore, when I was looking over the finance reports on this budget, I noticed that the school was losing probably over $10,000 in 2009-2010 budget. The pool was losing over $21,000. And I was trying to figure out a way where we could cut, costs. And what we came up with is my proposal is allowing Westmont Swim Club to run your community programs. Right now, the high school is spending over $40,000 on Learn to Swim, open swims, the water aerobics, that stuff. What the club would like to do is be able to run that with expense going to us. So we would cover all salaries, all expenses, liability insurance, all of that. And we would continue to run the open swim, Learn to Swim programs through the Westmont Swim Club. Therefore, taking out over $40,000 of your cost with keeping the programs. One of the main reasons is that with our resources, we already have the staff in place. We have the salaries, we have the workers and stuff to be able to do it. Also, I know there was a proposal of the board kind of wanting to wipe their hands clean of the pool. One of the proposals is that we would just cover all expenses of the pool, supplies, chemicals, maintenance, any kind of capital equipment, because I know, according to this budget, there's a couple big problems going on with the pool. And I'd rather do a quick, fix now that's finished so you guys don't have to keep coming back to it every single year. So instead of raising our fee, we would just cover all costs. Therefore, taking away the over $21,000 loss that you guys inherit every year from the pool and wiping that clean and taking away $21,000 from your budget. But being able to keep the programs, keep the Learn to Swim, keep the open swim, keep the swim club, and still be able to keep the PE swim courses going on just like it is. And that was kind of just the proposal. I don't know if there's any questions or...
I actually just have one question.
Yes.
The numbers for the repair and maintenance of the pool from 06, 07, 07, 08 are $10,000, $11,000, and then they've gone down to closer to $4,000. Can you just, does anybody know why?
These are our numbers. He did.
Right.
I supplied him with these.
Right.
So no, I don't remember the detail of that, but I can definitely
So there was
dig
just
into
2
it.
years in a row where we had some major repairs.
Probably.
There was some major,
New
major
pump
work
was
done
one.
a couple years ago.
So with that kind of a discrepancy, I guess my question is, how do you guys know that you'll be able to afford to take care of the pool?
Well, with being able to take over the Learn to Swim program, being able to make a little bit more revenue off of that, we will be definitely able to cover all expenses.
So you see those programs growing kind of under
Yes.
your...
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Our club has been growing drastically over the last 6 years or so, and we actually had a lot of people come in to see if we would actually offer Learn to Swim programs and stuff like that. We would be able to offer a Learn to Swim program where the instructors are actually will have a state champion swimmer, all basically state qualifier swimmers, college swimmers, that kind of stuff. So the level of that program should really go through the roof.
I have a question also.
Yes.
I know the junior high does use the pool for a competition.
Practices and stuff like that.
Yes. Just practice?
Yeah.
Would they still be?
Oh, definitely, definitely. My plan is to be able to basically, cover all the costs and still keep all the programs going. And actually, if everything goes well, I'll be able to expand that too and be able to use the pool more efficiently.
You clearly have an existing agreement with the district, so I mean, at this point, you're suggesting amending that agreement entirely and expanding it to cover all the other programs.
Yes.
Yeah, I like the proposal, but I mean, obviously, you would have to work with Maureen and Dr. Paul just to make sure that the agreement makes some sense and get their blessing on it as well, and their advocacy for it as well.
So we'll set up a meeting.
All right, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. I've been handed 2 cards here that look like they're budget questions. Am I correct on that from these 2 people? Okay. Okay, do you want to come on up then, Mrs. Thompson? And then the other one says budget, so would Mrs. Wilson mind if we hold this for the budget, for the public forum? Okay, perfect. Mrs. Thompson?
Yes, I just wanted, as Mr. Price referred to clarify the definition. A nurse that works in the school is not really a certified school nurse. A certified school nurse has taken additional courses at the master's level, has completed an internship, has taken an exam to receive the certification, and then has a Type 73 certificate like other assistant pupil personnel, like the psychologists and social workers, and they are then qualified to do your health histories and develop the individualized health plans for IEPs and 504 plans and other things like that. They also oversee a whole district-wide health program. They can provide health instruction in the classrooms, like Mrs. Corwin has done, I know at the elementary level, on nutrition, oversee your vision and hearing screening, do child find services as mandated with the screening, and I can't remember what else off the top of my head, many other things. And they are the ones that then are supervising the nurses that work in the schools. That's all. Because
Thank you.
sometimes people don't quite know the difference.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, before we begin the public forum on cost containment, I'd like to kind of go over a couple of process items. Number 1, if you are interested in speaking, if you could please fill out the sheet, just sign your name on the sheet. I already have the sheets in front of me of people that have already filled out and would like to speak. Number 2, we were informed that tonight's meeting is not being taped live, and because of the fact that it's being copied, taped tonight, it will be available probably around Friday. So what we're going to do is we'd like to, first of all, thank everybody for coming. It's important that the board hears from our community. What we'd like to do is I've got a timer. We're going to limit this to 5 minutes. And we're going to give it a time frame, and at the end of that time frame, we'll see how many more people want to speak or if we have to adjourn for another day. Does that sound fair to the board? So I'll have a timer here. And one question came up is if the board members are going to be responding. I think the thing is, we have no idea what the questions or comments are going to be. I'm sure if there's a board member that would like to speak to something, but just so that people know that we're not prepared to perhaps speak to something that you're commenting on. I hope that everyone understands that.
What is the time frame that you're thinking of?
5 minutes. And everybody does not need to use that 5 minutes.
You said there was a time frame after which you would see how many people still want to talk.
It was suggested to me that we stop around in like 2 hours. How does that sound? If we're done earlier, we're done earlier. That sound fair?
Works for me.
Good, then let's move on. So what we will do is, when we get to this point, we're going to have each person come up, and please make sure that you have filled out your name so that for Mrs. McMahon's minutes and that. But before we begin, we're going to have Ms. Jones give us a presentation. We apologize for the technical delay. We were hoping to have the presentation here, but that is not working, so.
And that is totally my fault because I thought we were going to be at the Village, and they have the document camera. So I was unprepared, not Grant nor our tech staff. Basically what I want to do is spend just 5 minutes, only 5 minutes, going over what you have in your public packet. And I'm addressing the audience, not the board, because the board has seen all of this information plenty of times at this point. So at the very beginning, you have several lists that were shared with the board at the February 23rd board meeting. And then you have
some more lists that were shared with the board at the March 16th board meeting. So at about page 8 is the first chart I want you all to take a look at. I'm just going to hold it up as if I were a teacher, but I'm not. It looks like this. This is a spreadsheet that I created, and it basically has the district's options in order to keep us solvent through the year 2013. And what we're talking about when we're talking about being solvent is not running out of cash. We're not talking about June 30th fund balances. We're talking about really May 31st fund balances, because that is historically the low point of cash in any school district. You receive taxes June 1st. May 31st is when you're really strapped. So we have different options on this page. The option A are the reductions that would be required if the district were to lose our portion of general state aid funding, not less our poverty grant. We chose to work with that dollar amount because that's about the exposure that the district has given the state's financial picture. Okay? So the state estimates that we're going to lose between $380,000 and $450,000. So that's the number that we are shooting for when we're looking at our budget reductions. Then underneath that, you'll see a Board of Ed list from 3/9/10, and that amounted to $658,000. Underneath that, you'll see another savings regarding course selection and enrollment savings. These are some specific courses that we could reduce at the high school just due to enrollment, and also a few other areas such as bilingual, because we wouldn't have to have that program next year. And those are all contingent upon enrollment, which we don't have exact numbers for that yet, but those are our best guesstimates. Should any of those numbers not prove to be in line with our estimates, that savings might not be as high as $150,000. Underneath that, you'll see savings based on class size increases. So the first savings is $67,895. That's for one FTE, and when in school districts we refer to full-time equivalents. So that's one full-time teacher. If we went to 28 for K through 2 and 30 for 3 through 5. And then you'll see that those options A through G coincide with the class size and the grade level center scenarios on the left-hand side. So the district would be in the position of saving 3-point FTE if we went to 30 for K5, 2.5 FTE if we stayed with the current class sizes but went to grade level centers, and so on. I won't read the entire document to you. The last part is revenue enhancements of about $120,000. That would be based on increased student fees for the most part. Those increases in the student fees have yet to be determined by the board and approved by the board. So again, it's not set in stone either. So if you look at the total of all those options, we would basically be pretty solvent through the year 2013. So the reason that the board asked for the public forum tonight was really to discuss the priorities. And that $600,587,000 number is made up of a list that was presented to the board and that we've had a lot of discussion on. And that list was based on, if you go a few pages back, what we affectionately refer to as List 1.
It's actually immediately behind the spreadsheet, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Sorry, yeah, I got my list confused. There's a couple of lists. It's immediately behind, not in front of. So it doesn't actually say List 1 on the top, but I've affectionately referred to it as List 1 for months now. So that $600,587,000, you can see right here are the items identified on List 1. Again, nothing's been set in stone, nothing's been decided on. That's why you all were invited here tonight, to have some discussion and get your input into the list. The next list that says 2010-11 potential budget cuts, these are still under consideration, and really everything on both lists is still under consideration. But these are additional cuts that the board could make to save an additional $878,000. If you turn one more page, you'll see what we call a financial projection model. And we have an outside company come in and do these financial projections for us with input from me and from Dr. Ball. And it's basically called the Financial Planning Program. They've presented to us back on February 23rd, and again, the board received an updated copy on March 16th. So this is the copy that was received on March 16th. Now, all of the rest of this, I won't insult your intelligence. You all can read on your own. But basically, page 14 is a graph. And it's a very important graph because it outlines basically when the district runs out of money. And again, I consider that when we run out of cash at May 31st, a really important timeline. The June 30th fund balances, even though May 31st of 2014, we're 1.5 million in the red. At June 30th of 2014, we have about $7.3 million. So just in that 1 month, we get half of our taxes from our levy, and we're back in the positive. But the May 31st balance, and I guess I should explain to you all that the two lines on this graph, the bottom line, are your May 31st balances. The top line are your June 30th balances, okay? So the May 31st balance, again, is the important one, and that's the one that the board has decided that they would like to remain solvent through the year 2013. So, again, tonight you've been asked to come forward and give your opinions on the cuts on any of these lists, and I realize there's a whole lot of information in here, but the most recent list is the one that we just you just all glanced through. So you're invited to comment, to ask for clarification on, and again, if we don't have an answer tonight, we can definitely get back to any of you. My phone number and my email address are on the district website, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. So it was just a very brief. I don't want to reiterate things that some of you may have already heard, but we'll go forward from here now.
Just one other note on the PMA model. This incorporates effectively the option A budget cuts that are outlined, earlier in the packet that Maureen was pointing to, as well as the revenue enhancements. So everything that you see in option A on the one page, like that, is incorporated in this PMA model. So we get to 2013, by doing this.
Or some combination of $600,000 worth of cuts. So that's important for you all to know. That's not been decided. It's just I'm the numbers person. That's the dollar amount that we're looking for. So the board needs to set their priorities with input from all of you. And I also want to point out that I had a few different requests for different models to be worked through. One request was for the WTA's suggestions that appear on the website. If we could work that through an FPP model. We didn't work that through because, as some of us discussed, really what the FPP shows is just a dollar amount. The FPP doesn't set our priorities for us. It just is a dollar amount. It's just some graphs. So we're all aware of the presentation that Mr. Saar put together, and it was very informative and very well put together. But again, that's a dollar amount that Mr. Saar and the WTA came up with. So we didn't run through all the different scenarios because honestly, we could be here for the next 10 months running through different scenarios.
An observation for the audience as well. The WTA did do a dovetail analysis of their recommendations against that list one recommendation of $600,000. I had done one earlier. The overlap is at least $500,000 of overlap between what you see on list one and what the WTA recommended. So in short, that list one that has a number on the bottom of 600,587. 80% of it, 80 to 85% of it overlaps identically with the WTA's recommendations. So, and I point that out because I wanted people to understand that the administration worked with the teachers and heard the teachers, and we're excited about hearing the teachers' input, and we appreciate their input. We genuinely do. So, it's always the last push over the goal line that's the hardest, and the last 10% that's always the hardest conversation. So, I'm done.
And Dan brings up another good point. There were some questions regarding the lists and how the lists originated. Dr. Ball invited everybody, every single solitary person who works for the district, to provide input on those lists, and every suggestion that was sent to he or I is on those lists. So we didn't just sit in an office and come up with things ad hoc. It was really open up to anybody who wanted to put their input in. So that's how things ended up on the list. So hopefully that clarifies some questions regarding where those came from. So unless there's any other question, I will sit down and you all speak.
Thank you, Maureen. Just to follow up on what else is in the public packet, after the documents that that Maureen has put together and is in fact the WTA's presentation there from March 23rd. And then the last thing is written on the top, the documents that were presented to the board this evening. So, okay. So again, I'm going to do these lists in the order of what I have. I have in front of me so far what's been written on. I will grab those after we get through these. Judy Wilson, please.
Thank you for letting me speak tonight. I'd like to address the trained certified school nurses position tonight. I spoke with Sheila Grogan, who is a SACID nurse, and she's also the chairperson of the Illinois Association of School Nurses. And she's informed me on some of the benefits of having a certified school nurse versus a registered nurse. Only a certified school nurse can do the following. They can contribute and participate in writing in a student's IEP. They're certified in vision, hearing screenings. DuPage County conducts one screening per year for our district, and many times additional screenings are conducted by Mrs. Corwin for new students that move in, and she conducts re-screenings for students that need them throughout the school year. Many times underlying problems have been detected and addressed. She's also an important integral part of early childhood and preschool screening prior to entry into our district. She works with a staff of psychologists, sociologists, OT and PT, speech therapists, and special ed coordinators to identify the students' needs that they will have and the challenges. A certified nurse develops, coordinates, and administers health care plans for each student as needed. We have students in our district with chronic illnesses such as diabetes, seizures, and asthma. A certified school nurse is able to monitor their daily conditions and enables the student to help manage their conditions so that they can remain in school for the educational process. In regards to our SACID students, the state of Illinois will reimburse 50% of our school nurse's salary based on the SACID student's need, but only if she is certified. An example would be if a student condition required a feeding tube, they would reimburse her salary 50% by the state. We have many medically fragile children that participate in the SACID program. We've developed a large trust factor with SACID parents by having a licensed school nurse on staff to meet their children's needs. Please don't diminish the quality and the amount of services that only a certified school nurse can provide to our students by eliminating this position and hiring a registered nurse. All of our students benefit from the services provided by a licensed certified school nurse. Please don't start the budget cuts with our students' health. Thank you.
Mary Kay Kepper, I'm sorry.
Sorry, I was asked to add just one thing to that discussion, and that was the National Association of School Nurses recommends one certified school nurse per 750 students. Thank you for reminding me of that.
Mary Kay Caparelli, please. Jim Babiak. Jill Stennard, you'll be next, so you can get ready.
Jim Babiak, I'm here as concerned alumni tonight, I suppose, for lack of a better word. Over the past month, since this all got going, literally hundreds of emails are going back and forth between me and other alumni. And I was trying to put together what it was, and for some reason, Norman McLean came in my mind, and he said that eventually all things merge into one and a river runs through it. Well, when it comes to this budget and all the thoughts that were shared, The one thing that ran through it all was 1985. 1985 was Armageddon in this district if you were a student. Music gone, art gone. Marching band was John Martin's, a history teacher, was our marching band director in 1985. I mean, it was really, really bad what happened here. You know, we all made it through, but in the time that went on from then, the advancements of this district in the last 25 years are unbelievable. We had no AP, now there's AP. We had one honors class, now I think there's an honors class in every high school curriculum area. It's unbelievable what's happened. And when I read these budget cuts, I kind of see making 1985 look like a picnic and undoing 25 years of great advancements. And that would be a shame if that happened, because I remember what it was like, and I don't think any kid should have to go through what we went through. Having virtually nothing to having everything is a great thing. And what concerns me even more as I read through this, we're talking about, let's eliminate all clubs, let's eliminate all sports. And in my job, I deal with metrics all the time, and I don't see any metrics being applied to any of these discussions. It'd be great if we could say, if the participation level's below 10% or below 5%, maybe that's a club we'd look at discontinuing. If a sport's below 10% of the enrollment, we could look at discontinuing it, or asking parents or community members to volunteer, to pay additional fees to keep it alive, to keep the whole high school and junior high school experience as enriched as possible. And I fear that taking a daisy cutter-like approach will do no good and actually, like I said, undo a lot of good things that have been done in this district since 1985. And I don't want anyone to be haunted by 2010 like I sort of feel a bunch of people have been haunted by 1985.
Just a quick follow-up comment on that, Jim. Thank you for your comments. I think I think it's fair to note at this point that what happened in 1985 was effectively undone in 1986, but it was undone by virtue of a referendum. And I think that's fair to note at this point.
Okay. Hi, my name is Jill Sternard, and I live in Clarendon Hills. I've raised 3 children in the school district. We've lived here for over 20 years, and I've had kids in the school district for 14 years. And I'd first like to start out by saying I look at myself as someone who always likes to be part of a solution, not part of a problem. So I offer myself to all of you sitting here, everyone in the audience, as someone who is willing to volunteer to help on any committees or task force or anything that we need to do going forward to get creative to help solve some of the problems that are in front of us with these budget cuts. So I didn't really know what the process was going to be tonight, if there were going to be chart pads and notes taken, so I decided to put my cost containment suggestion in a letter, and I have a copy for each of you so that you would have that in front of you, because I wasn't exactly sure what the process was. So I'm going to go ahead and read this. Unfortunately, our school district is in a very challenging budget situation. Difficult choices will need to be made soon as to what programs, services, and positions need to be cut to handle our budget shortfall due to the reduced little revenue generated in our district and the state of Illinois cutting funding to school districts. I really don't envy you the decisions that you have to make, and you're the ones that have to make them. So as I look at the list of proposed cuts and the quality of our educational experience, the people, programs, services, and dollar amount they represent, it is truly overwhelming, as we all know. My purpose in addressing you today is to ask for your help in containing the costs that you're incurring, either as a board, directing the board president, or as an individual acting alone and not on behalf of the board. The expenses I'm talking about are the dollars spent consulting with the school board's attorney that are above and beyond those items covered under the $150 monthly retainer. During the month of February of 2010, the bill from the attorney was over $5,000. In the period May 2009 to January 2010, over $9,000 was spent. Again, I don't know if this was people acting alone or on behalf of the whole board. I can only read between the lines to understand what these discussions entailed. Again, this is over and above the routine daily business covered by the monthly retainer fee. For comparison, in the 5 years preceding May of 2009, $1,734 was spent based on copies of bills I've received. I, for one, would like to understand what has changed to cause such a significant increase in legal expenses. I would also like to understand how any of these consultations has positively impacted our students' educational experience. As you look to cut costs out of the budget, this could represent a $60,000 savings if the February bill is indicative of future spending on legal fees. It's my opinion that this expense needs to be curtailed. It is also my suggestion that all possible internal resources are exhausted before consulting the attorneys. Please, please keep a teacher, a specialist, support staff personnel, a program, a service, or extracurricular activities in place instead of spending money the district doesn't have consulting with an attorney. And I thank you for the opportunity.
Did you have anything else, Jill? You done? You're done? Okay. I have a statement that I've prepared. I know this question has come up a couple times, so I have prepared a short statement. The district has accountants, architects, consultants, and now we have new legal counsel. I am the first one to admit that these bills are too high. The board share comes to about half of the total that you had just heard and is the result of recent specific personnel concerns. You can rest assured that once these issues are settled, that these bills will come down at that time. The president of the school board is under regulations, and our own board policy is supposed to be the board's contact with the school board attorney. I cannot say why past 201 school board presidents did not follow these regulations and policies. I look forward to the day that I can obtain the documents and the information that I need to carry out my elected duties, and I hope that I will continue to use our attorneys on behalf of the board. Thank you. Marie Doherty, please.
Good evening. My name is Marie Doherty. I currently have 2 students at the high school. I have a son who is a senior, and I have a daughter who is a sophomore. I have lived in Westmont my entire life. I am also an alumni of the high school. And having said that, I share Jim's love for the school, also Jill's love for the school. Before I read my statement, I'd like to say I really love the school district, I love this town, and I love the high school. And that's what keeps me coming back to meetings and to be involved in this process tonight. Thank you for allowing me to speak. A concerned group met recently to generate recommendations about specific actions we can take as parents and community members to help our district through this crucial period, and I speak tonight on behalf of them. We firmly believe Westmont School District 201 is a special place full of passionate, dedicated, and hardworking students, teachers, parents, and community members. Our current economic climate has forced our school community as a whole to sacrifice and find creative ways to make it through this difficult period. Our first recommendation addresses extracurricular activities. These activities are vital to Westmont students, and we would hate to lose any of them. We are in consensus that families participating in these activities should bear more of the burden by paying higher fees. For example, if participation fees for the high school and the junior high, sports, clubs, band, etc., were increased from the current $0 to $45 per activity or per sport. If we increase those to $100 to $150 per activity or sport, we estimate that the district could bring in up to an additional $90,000. While this may only provide a temporary solution, we are willing to take on more of the financial burden to keep those passion-building activities going strong. These increased fees should extend to all extracurricular activities. We also feel there should be a minimal number of students enrolled in an activity in order for it to exist. In addition to paying increased fees for extracurricular activities, we feel classes requiring additional resources such as technology, art, food, labs, and industrial arts should include some sort of increased supply fee. We're willing to bear that burden as well. Our next recommendation calls for parents and community members to apply their own time, skills, and talents and resources to assume greater ownership of our programs and our facilities. We have a parent and community base capable and eager to take on this burden. In fact, we agree the entire climate of the district would experience a positive change if parents felt a greater ownership. Areas where parents could assume a greater role include these: field maintenance, such as the baseball field, the softball field, football, soccer. We realize this is a burdensome job, especially when Mother Nature forces immediate action. Another area would be landscaping and the grounds cleanup of all of our school buildings. We could volunteer our time and skills in costume, set design, and construction for our performances. Also in security, scorekeeping, ticket taking at all of our sports contests. And, lastly, maintenance of buildings. We have lots of skilled community members in electricity, plumbing, and repairs that could provide those services. We are asking all members of the school community to ask themselves, what can I do or what can I sacrifice to promote and protect our greatest natural resource, our children? Lastly, we are proud to be a part of Westmont and School District 201. Our school community is made up of loving, dedicated, and diverse people, world-class teachers and administrators, and extraordinary students. We believe that we all need to work together and make sacrifices to get District 201 through this difficult period with minimal disruption to the educational process. We appreciate the board listening to and considering our recommendations. And again, thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening.
Thank you.
Marie, I did have a question. What was the recommended minimum enrollment?
We can discuss that.
Oh, okay.
And I think it would be commensurate with, because for each activity, there's a different cost put to that activity. So we'd have to figure it out for each activity, the cost ratio, benefit ratio for example, French Club versus the BPA, they all have different costs.
Okay, I was just... Sure, I was just curious if you had discussed it to that level. Okay, thank you.
Sue Sapinski, please.
Hi, thank you for letting me speak. My name is Sue Zapinski, and I currently have 2 juniors attending Westmont High School and have had 2 students graduate. I am speaking on behalf of myself and some other parents, and we believe, as stated earlier, that Westmont 201 is a very special place full of passion, dedicated, and hardworking people. My recommendation addresses the position of the Dean Athletic Director here at Westmont High School. The position is currently on the list for either reduction or removal. The importance of this position was presented to the board during in a 4-page PowerPoint presentation after the SPAN meeting last week. Did you guys all see this? Okay. Myself and another parent met with Mr. McCord, who is the current athletic director dean here at the high school yesterday, and talked about a lot of the points that are on this PowerPoint. I thought I knew this position well, having known Mr. McCord, and I was genuinely surprised at the complexity and the variety of his responsibilities and what this position entails and the aspect of the involvement he has with students. Also, this position is only one of 3 administrators at the high school, and removing 1/3 of them for all that they do would very much burden the 2 administrators that would be left, and their schedules are already jam-packed. So I'm aware that today this position was posted as a job opportunity or an employment opportunity on our website. because Mr. McCord is retiring. We believe that this position must be filled and that the benefit to both the students and the faculty is irreplaceable. I respectfully request, as a representative of many people in the community, that this position not be included as part of our reduction cost measures. Thank you.
Thank you. Robbie Moretta, please.
My name is Robbie Murata. I currently have 2 children at Manning, and I have 2 younger children who will be coming through the district. I thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I believe that whatever cuts are made need to be as far removed from our students as possible. One of my greatest concerns here is option A and option B that involve increasing class sizes at the elementary level. I believe doing this would have a lasting negative impact on our kids. Some of our classrooms are already over the limit that we had previously set. One study that I recently came upon for a conference on optimal elementary school size for effectiveness and equity suggested, excuse me, children in classes that have 17 or less students fare better than children that in classes of 25 or more, which is an obvious outcome. However, they took it one step further, knowing that keeping classes that small is not really realistic. They looked at medium-sized classes, 17 to 25, as compared to those over 25. The findings indicated there were clear detrimental effects to students in the areas of literacy and mathematics when moving from medium to large-sized classrooms. Are we really considering piling more kids into these rooms? On top of the negative learning impact, we don't have the physical space. Desks are already arranged in creative ways just to fit them in and still be able to walk from the front to the back of the classrooms. Tables have been removed and kids are sitting on the floor for group projects. Some of you have previously spoken up against increasing class sizes, and I urge you all to vote against overcrowding our classrooms further. In addition, I'm concerned with any cuts affecting students that are struggling, especially in reading and mathematics. Summer school is one of the suggested cuts, and I think it's a shame that this program is considered disposable because it's not affected. I don't believe it should have gotten to the point where it was so easy to get rid of. I would have liked to have seen this restructured with a real curriculum put in place and not dumped altogether, and I would hope the board might consider doing that in the future. I also oppose cutting any of our district reading specialists. I don't think we can afford to risk what might happen to these children if they don't receive these services. I fear parents who depend on these services will not seek out private tutors, mostly due to the cost, and that these children will fall further behind. I believe above all else, we need to focus on the children. They should be the first ones considered in any decisions that are made, and I urge you to keep this in your mind as you contemplate these very difficult decisions. Thank you.
Carla Swaringa, and I apologize in advance for thank you.
My name is Carla Swaringa. I have 4 sons. 2 have gone through. I have a junior and a freshman. 3 of my sons have learning disabilities. My youngest son has ADD. At 5th grade, he didn't read. He could read at a 2nd grade level. Every book he had to read, I had to read with him. In 6th grade, I read every book he read. My son reads. We found him sitting in the yard Sunday reading a book to my dog. My son wouldn't do that. The reading specialist has done so much for him, his confidence, not just in English, but in every class. He reads a science book, he reads a social studies book. But it's not just for kids who have learning disabilities. The whole English 9 is getting such a great gift from this reading specialist, and to take her away would be such a loss For 5 years, I taught at ICANN preschool. Those kids are now coming into the junior high and high school. When they were graduating, I said, you want to be in this district. This is the best district in the state. I sat here with my oldest son, and they said, this school holds, 500, 600 kids? And I said to my son, my graduating class was 650 kids. I thought, well, I don't know if I want to send him to a small school. It was the best thing I ever did. I chose this school over Timothy Christian. And I don't regret it a day, but I regret the day that we lose this reading specialist and any of the specialists, because they are the gift that you gave us. My son now reads by himself. I don't have to read his book. He's reading Romeo and Juliet in English. He'd have never touched that book. Of Mice and Men, he'd have never read that book. They gave us a gift, and we can't lose those specialists. We can't lose any of them, because our children need them. The kids from my preschool, I promised their parents that we get a great education in this district. I don't want to look like a fool. You need to keep these people. We need them, and the students need them. And thank you for letting me talk.
Jonathan McKay, please.
Hello, my name is Jonathan McKay. I just want to talk about two things that have been on all the list in the area of actually revenue generation, not in terms of cuts. They are eliminating the fee waivers for Technology Center of DuPage, TCD, and for high school sports, activities, band, drama, things like this. For all of you that are out there, these are for kids that are on free reduced price lunch, which means they're under the federal poverty guidelines. And so these are kids that without these waivers probably may not be able to do these activities. And so by thinking about even considering this, what you're saying is we're going to become a district of have and have-nots. And there may not be many people in here that fall into that category. I know a number of single moms. I know a number of families that have made tough decisions. But their children are not responsible for those. I know moms right now that are at night school. In fact, my family's helped finance a couple that are trying to get back on track after just family tragedies. And so I'm hoping that that gets taken out of this list because it's $500 and $1,000 total. And I'm hoping that for $1,500, we don't tell a couple of kids, I'm sorry, everyone else can participate in whatever programs we decide to keep, but you can't. I would not want to be the teacher administrator who has to look at those children in the eye and tell them that. I would not want to be the parent of those child who in shame, once again, can't provide for their children because maybe the only place that they can be equal in their poverty is in the school system. Thank you.
Lynn Banks, please.
Hi, my name is Lynn Banks. I have a junior here at the high school. We've lived in Westmont for 28 years. I actually remember when we first bought our house, hearing about how the programs had gotten cut at the high school and thinking if I had a child, I would probably move to a different town. I'm glad that didn't happen, that I moved. I'm glad I got a child. And he's actually had a good education so far here. A brief, quick thing I wanted to reiterate on Mrs. Quattrone is the tremendous impact she's had even in my son's life in freshman and sophomore year in helping to improve his reading abilities and the difference that she's made in all the classes across the board that he's participated, history, English, all the rest of them. Anyway, on to the main reason why I came up. I know the teacher negotiations are coming up, I believe, in the next couple months. One of the things that I do not see anywhere on any of the proposed budgets, and I could have missed it, would be asking for, and this is no disregard to any of the teachers because we have fantastic teachers here, but asking for pay freezes. Or one of the other things that came up is I'd like to know what the step increase is From the investigations and the little bits that we've put together, it looks like that there's set step increases and a 2% yearly raise. I don't understand what the step increase is. My understanding is that none of the raises are performance-based, that they're automatic. And it seems like in the economy right now, where you read about other schools that are freezing teacher salaries or cutting staff, it's amazing to me that between the step increases and the 2%, that a number of the teachers are ending up with 6.5% to 8.5% raises every year, when we already have staff that's considerably higher in the county than a lot of other schools. So that's an area with the negotiations coming up that I would hope would be considered by the board, and that maybe that could save us some money from the increase in the proposed costs for next year. And again, I'd like to understand what the step increase is on top of the 2%. And my other suggestion to the board would be to please consider, when you're working on the negotiations, making some of the raises, if you can, I don't know how the unions work, but if you can, to make it more of a performance-based increase than a automatic increase. I understand there's another school district nearby where part of their increase, it'll depend, if they do take extra classes, on what kind of grade they get in that class. Not just that you have to pass it, but if you don't get an exceedingly high grade in it, that would have an impact on what kind of an increase you might get for that. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Just define step and lane.
Maureen, can you take a minute? I just want to explain a little bit about teacher salary schedules. It's basically a box with cells on it. Steps refer to downward movement, and a teacher is afforded a step for each year that they work for the district. Lanes are vertical movement across, and they move that way on the step schedule, or the salary schedule, based on increased degrees, master's degrees, master's plus 48, all of that. It's in the contract. So when we worked the model, we worked step increases into the model, as well as an additional 2% on top of that. And some of you may think that that's high, but it's, again, just an assumption, like everything else in the model is. And having not even started negotiations yet, we couldn't say where they might end up. So that was what we consider conservative. But I guess if there's any other questions on step, if that's a good enough explanation. So when we're referring to raises, we're referring to, step increases, lane increases, as well as base increase.
So Maureen, the base is on top of the lane or step increase?
Currently, yes.
That's how it works. So when you hear about a percentage increase for a raise, it doesn't reflect, the number doesn't necessarily reflect the step and the lane number, because that varies according to where one is on the schedule.
Yeah, and I've already costed out what the current step costs us. So basically, I take all of the teachers and I put them into their cell on the salary schedule, and then I multiply that out on the base of that cell, and then I would move everybody down a step each year to see what the step costs us. And for next year, the step will cost us about 1.65%, which equates to right about $160,000. Okay, and that's not, obviously, it's spread out among all of the teaching staff, but it's not spread out evenly by any means, but that's about what it costs the district. And that's just for next year. And it's kind of a complicated subject, but that's as simple as I can make it.
Unfortunately, it's an awkward subject.
It is.
It's a very awkward subject, and just acknowledging that it's awkward, because it's a hard conversation, and it's the biggest part of our expenses. And so nobody at this table wants to denigrate our teachers in any way, shape, or form, and I don't think anybody in that audience wants to denigrate our teachers in any way, shape, or form. But it is a hard conversation.
Anybody else? Moving along, Teresa Steger, please.
Marie, will you prep the next person as well?
Sure. Kathy Washburn, you're next.
Hi, I'm Teresa Steger, and I'm thankful for those who went before me, who talked about the nurse and who talked about the classroom sizes, because I don't have to talk about those. Our teachers seek to develop our children in enduring understanding and in-depth knowledge of subjects they present. They also know that experiential learning involving more than just listening improves retention. I can read all day about making bread, but to understand it better, when I feel the dough with my hands and I see the effects of the yeast and I smell it baking and taste it fresh out of the oven, then I know about making bread. Further, if there's an application, a need for the knowledge, so much the better. Problem-based learning provides the need and the experiential approach, which, when coupled with student ownership, can lead to enduring understanding and in-depth knowledge of the area of the problem. How many of our children know in minute detail the roles, history, and interactions of their favorite television characters? How many can traverse the world of their favorite video game to multiple levels and enjoy discussing strategies they use with their friends? Destination Imagination incorporates challenging problems to inspire teams of students to explore areas of math, science, architecture and structure, and the arts, to think creatively, to work together as a team. Teams are intentionally small, no more than 7 children, so each child contributes. There are no free rides. The teams choose the problem, devise a solution, create a play, incorporate the solution, and perform the resulting solution in competition against other teams who selected that problem. The skills developed using creativity to solve problems, working as a team, evaluating alternatives, presenting your results, thinking on your feet are highly desired in all aspects of life. Destination Imagination is open to all interested children of kindergarten through high school age. Parents and the district historically have shared costs of the program. There are no other programs like it offered in the district for students at the lower level. The support of Destination Imagination is under consideration to be dropped. I'd like the board to consider carefully the value of Destination Imagination to our students. If you determine that you need to decrease support for the program, to consider reducing support, not eliminating it. Continue to pay for the registration materials for the teams. Allow the teams to hold fundraisers and give them an account to accumulate their funds to offset the cost of global competition should a team achieve that level of success. Thank you for the opportunity to address the board on this matter, and thanks for those who already spoke about other matters of my concern. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Kathy Washburn. I'd like to thank you for having us tonight and letting us speak. I would just like to have a little side note here. What we discussed earlier about the facilities report and the safety of the auditorium seats, I think that we need to revisit that list because there is the safety of the children on the Manning playground that is not addressed in that list. Given that our district does not have the greatest academic reputation, why would we even consider making changes that would negatively impact the educational experience of 201 students? To hear that class sizes may be increased, reading programs may be cut back, and third grade accelerated math may be eliminated is extremely disturbing to me. Our class sizes at Manning are too large as we are now, period. I know it has been proposed to cut the hours or eliminate completely our curriculum director. I have been to 4 curriculum nights, volunteered in the classroom for 3 years, and been actively involved in the PTO, and would not know our curriculum director if she passed me on the street. I am unaware of what the position of curriculum director entails. I don't recall any correspondence regarding curriculum in the 3 years that my children have been at Manning. But I am impressed by the reading specialists and their ability to communicate with the parents. They have had a positive impact on my children, promoting reading, which is the basis of learning. My kindergartner utilized RAP this year and has excelled beyond our expectations. Her tremendous growth can also be attributed to the teaching of Mrs. Mary Roth. She's an educator who goes above and beyond the norm, and it would be a disservice to our school community to let her or anyone of her caliber go. Eliminating a program like accelerated math would hinder our children's educational growth. We cannot and should not sacrifice any of our top students. Educational opportunities which surrounding districts are offering need to be offered here. If not, we will lose more and more good families to surrounding towns or private schools. How can we improve our test scores and overall educational reputation if you are pulling the rug out from these children? Please think and act responsibly. Your decisions will impact our children's future and the level of education that they are offered. Thank you.
Karen Niemeyer, and I see, Melissa, you're ready to.
Hi, I'm Karen Niemeyer. My daughter is a kindergartner currently at Manning School, and I have a son who will be a kindergartner next year there. Just to piggyback what Kathy had said about the facilities meeting, one thing I know was a concern when we were at the PTO meeting last night about our playground. It is currently not at, I think it's the ADA compliant. I believe there are some areas that are just 2 inches of mulch compared to like where it's supposed to be like 10 or 12 inches. And so my concern would be more to see if we could have that, something like that on the I guess on the notes for that meeting, because I would see a potential lawsuit there as opposed to someone getting injured in here. So that was just aside for that. I don't have a speech, but I took notes. So I worked with page 55 in your packet. It's at the end where it says the items recommended by staff and still under consideration for the board. On that first page, it just says eliminate all elementary clubs, eliminate all the junior high sports, or raise the fees. Pretty much any of those are with the high school, elementary schools, and junior high. It may not seem like that it's a curriculum-based situation, but it really is. I have 7 years of teaching background in middle school, 5th grade and 7th grade, and I'm realistic to know that my students are not 100% there for me, like listening to what I have to say the whole time. They're thinking about their after-school activity, being eligible for that sport for the week, so that's their motivation to actually do well if they want to be in their club, or do well if they want to actually be in the meet for the week. So I feel like eliminating that is a huge disservice to the curriculum and to the children. It's taking away possibly that one thing that maybe makes Johnny excited to be at school, because he cannot wait to go, take part in, I heard there was a French club or cross country meet or basketball. So that is, I think personally, a huge consideration that needs to be addressed. And it really, truly does have to do with the curriculum. Also taken away from that, too, I just know as a teacher, some teachers really, truly depend on that stipend for additional income. And I just, know from experience some people that really depend on that. Going on through the packet, I was looking at another thing that stood out to me was on page 7, reducing assistant principal at the junior high to part-time. Again, just being a parent, but with just a kindergartner, but knowing the fact that I've taught in a middle school, I can't even tell you how much I've needed that assistant principal for discipline, evaluation purposes, support, whether if it's in an IEP meeting or just a concern with a parent that I need to address. I think taking away that is a huge disservice to the junior high. I'm not really sure the position of a dean. I don't know if I haven't been at the high school level, so I don't know if that's similar to it. But I feel like I can talk about the junior high since I have that experience as a teacher. One of the questions I guess I had too was if we did do the grade level centers, what, and you don't have to answer now obviously, but what does that do to the Title I money? Because I know that was brought up, because I know bringing the schools together, that would possibly eliminate the Title I income. And then I was just curious too, with South School, if how much space is being used percentage-wise, and I think I did hear that it is being rented. I knew in the past that it was talked about different districts bringing in special programs in there. So those were a few of the things. One huge thing I really, really want to bring up is, again,
20 seconds.
okay, class size is huge. I've taught 17, I've taught 30. That is a huge disservice to the teachers if we even fathom the idea of giving them more students to teach. And that's all I guess I got. Okay, thank you.
Maureen, would you, excuse me, would you mind just clarifying the process we're in for the Manning Playground?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
There was a committee that was put together with PTO, Diana Mulby, Mike Mayoris, who's our director of facilities, and some other parents, community members. They discussed with a vendor how to make the playground compliant. The Park District volunteered some very worthwhile services to that endeavor as well. So we have put the project out to bid as of last Wednesday. Today we had an on-site meeting with potential contractors to go over the project, and I'll open bid packages next Monday and most likely bring to the board on the April 27th meeting for a vote to go forward with the project. We also applied to the state board as to whether or not that project could be funded with ARA funds, which is the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, the stimulus funds, and we're waiting right now to hear back from them.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Melissa Kempf. I am also an alumni of District 201. My husband and I chose to lay our roots here and start our family here because of the small schools and all the opportunities that the small schools would provide them. I think kind of to piggyback off the last two ladies, the facilities report that was discussed earlier this evening, I did have a couple of concerns about that as well. Particularly, I have two children at Manning, one who is in kindergarten, one who's in second grade. And seeing the reports in regards to the fact that within the next couple of years, we're going to be making some decisions about the future of Manning School, whether we demolish it or remodel it. My concern really is the financial impact of that and what is the reality of that. In the past, there's been referendums, but I'm not quite sure if that would pass with our current economic status, within the community, within the state, within our nation. Right now, I feel like there's some safety issues outstanding at Manning. One thing that the PTO has been looking at doing is putting smart boards or purchasing smart boards for our children's classrooms. Yet last night we were informed that possibly the electrical wiring would not be able to uphold all of the smart boards that we would like to purchase, and that's concerning. That's impacting our kids' educational needs and their opportunities. I'm glad you spoke about the playground because that was another concern and issue that I have. We're concerned about the seats here in the auditorium being a safety issue, but what about if a child fell off the monkey bars and got injured? That is a lawsuit issue. Another concern that I have in regards to the playground issue was that it's been suggested that the PTO put funds towards the replacement or the fixing of our playground. Part of the issue with our playground is it's not up to ADA compliance, and it's also a safety issue because of the fact that there's not enough mulch underneath the playground to support a child if they were to fall. They would be injured most likely. But yet we're going to spend $10,000 to replace these auditorium seats. So I think that's an issue. And then the fact that the high school booster club is not being asked to put some money towards a new baseball fence and a scoreboard. But that's kind of my side note. I understand that cuts need to be made within the district, and that's going to be a difficult choice for the board to make, and I'm really hoping that you listen to the community's outpouring and their suggestions. One concern that I strongly feel is that the class size and the suggestion to increase the class size. At Manning School, our classes are already at capacity. As Robbie Murata had brought up earlier, the classrooms are jammed-packed with desks. Kids are sitting on floors during group time, sitting out in the hallways to do individual reading. And I don't think increasing the class size is going to help them academically either. Another concern I have is getting rid of the Quest and the RAP programs. Our teachers and our reading specialists have already, been notified that they have received a pink slip, and that's concerning. We need our reading specialists. With our district's poor test scores, especially in the high school level, how can we justify getting rid of our reading specialists. And eliminating the accelerated math and quest programs is not fair for the higher achievers either. These students need to be encouraged to grow and bloom, or they might lose their zest for learning. The 3 years that my children have attended Manning, they've been blessed with amazing and talented teachers who have encouraged their growth educationally and socially. I have witnessed their teaching methods in the classroom as I volunteered over the last 3 years. And, we should definitely applaud all their efforts because they do an amazing job. My concern, though, is that with our academic cuts and the loss of academic opportunities for my children and everybody's children, we're not getting the same opportunities as some of our local districts. I want to keep my children in this district. I want them to continue to go through the schools just as I did, and I hope that the board makes the most appropriate decisions for our children's futures. Thank you.
Melanie Campello, please. And then Sue Frageau is after that.
While Melanie's on her way up, I think this is a good time for me to suggest to all of you, recognizing that we're facing these decisions and none of us want to make these decisions. A big reason why we're facing these decisions has to do with the fact that, and on this model that Maureen referenced earlier on page 14 of the financial model, one of the assumptions, and it's a legitimate one and one that will probably last for several years, is that the state is not going to fund our general state aid. It's $450,000 a year. So, to the extent that you have a sense of anger in my voice about that, it is this. The state of Illinois needs to hear from you. The governor needs to hear from you. Your representatives need to hear from you. If you are passionate, and you are clearly passionate by virtue of being here tonight, let the people in Springfield know what their priorities need to be. Please, don't let it just die here tonight. Take it to Springfield yourselves as well, via emails and phone calls.
Thank you, Dan.
I'm Melanie Campillo, and first I wanted to second what Jonathan McKay said. I really appreciate that all the children should have equal opportunities. I represent a group of community members who are fully committed to District 201, including working toward a referendum in the future. We got together and scrutinized the list of proposed budget cuts, and were impressed by the WTA's thorough list, as well as the culmination of ideas sent in by all of the staff members on lists 1 and 2. We agree with a lot of the majority of the suggestions made by WTA because we also want solutions that are the least detrimental to the children. However, it is difficult to imagine any meaningful financial change without careful scrutiny of the elephant in the room, the teachers' salaries and benefits, which represent 72% of our district's budget. We've gone over the steps and the lanes and that sort of thing, so I won't go over that again, but the percent of increase for each year of service over the contract that is just ending for each year of service in the step, well, without getting into everything, was about 4 to 5% for each year that our teachers were in service in 201. In addition to that, as was mentioned, there's another raise that's usually negotiated with each contract. So the combination of those two annual raises for our teachers range, depending on their education and them switching lanes, between around 7 to almost 9% over the last contract. So unlike the healthy financial outlook when the contract was done 3 years ago, things are a lot different, as has been gone. I don't need to do that either because of the state funding, as Dan just said. But here we have, our teachers have a unique opportunity to make a significant contribution to the financial well-being of our district. For example, a freeze on these salary increases for just 1 year would save the district approximately $360,000. Not to mention possibly saving valuable positions currently on the list for elimination, such that we've heard from so many people. Reading specialists, the professional school counselor, dean of students, media specialists. Other areas of consideration for cost containment regarding the teachers would include looking over their benefits, incentive packages for retirement, longevity clauses, taking a look at that, and tying the future raises to CPI. In light of what I just said, it's probably difficult to imagine that we really do have the utmost respect and regard for our teachers. And I've had 3 kids go through the district, and we're well aware of our teachers' competence and expertise. And I think the WTA's list of recommendations exemplifies their concern for the students because they spend a lot of time on that. It's extremely uncomfortable to stand up here and look at a group and suggest modifications to your future income and or benefits. And it'll be, as Dan said, it'll be very uncomfortable for the WTA and the board to negotiate the new contract. But we are respectfully suggesting that teachers share the burden of this desperate financial climate as they proceed into the contract negotiations. Thank you.
Thank you.
Licia, you're after. And did it really work out that the 3 sisters are right in a row?
You're good. You're good, Sue.
You go ahead. Okay.
Hello, my name is Susan Ferjot. My husband and I have been residents here for 21 years. We are currently parents of a senior, a sophomore, and an 8th grader. As of this May, we will have completed the full course of District 201 as our first one graduates and goes to U of I. We've been going through completing college applications, and that has made us grossly aware of the fact of how important extracurricular activities are. That is one thing that has shown up on every college application. And they look if your students are well-rounded. And I am so happy to say that our school has provided that. Having a senior, I am hearing over and over who's going where and what, and almost everyone is getting into the school of their choice because they do have the well-rounded activities. And something our school or high school, and if you haven't been here yet, you might not understand it, but it was mentioned earlier, every child needs to shine in one way or another. They don't all get to shine academically. And there is a boy that is one of my son's ages and didn't have an area where he shined. And one place that came out was they had a battle of the bands, and the different students get up and compete. And that was the one place he got to shine, and you could see it on his face. And those are the opportunities that our high school allows our children because we are small and the teachers know them, and it's been a tremendous experience. So what I would like to say, if we cut all the programs currently being suggested, we'll be putting our future graduates at a great disadvantage when applying to college. It's time for the community to agree a referendum to ensure our future students receive all the advantages our current graduates have benefited from. It has been over 23 years since we have requested additional tax money to support our children's education. As it was clearly pointed out during the last school board election, if our schools don't provide a solid education, the Westmont residents also suffer because our property values will go down and new families aren't going to want to move in. I just hope everyone gets the wonderful educational experiences my son, who's now graduating, has had. Thank you.
Tony Pisani is next.
My name is Licia Vanderkar, and as Marie pointed out, those were 2 of my sisters. that spoke before me just by accident. We were lined up. But collectively, we have had and do have 9 children total that have come through this district. And just thought I'd add that note. But I do want to thank all of you in advance for your careful consideration of all of these really difficult but necessary budget decisions you're going to have to make. Nobody underestimates the difficulty. And I think, too, that it's only natural for each of us to focus on issues that are the most important to our immediate family at the present time. My family's top priority is the district employing top quality teachers that effectively teach our children. I think a lot of people would agree with that. But with that said, as so many people have already pointed out, there are many more people and services that shape and educate our children to become wonderful people outside of school, because that is our goal for all of us, to get our children through high school and graduate and eventually on their own paycheck. But so many of the areas have already been touched on. One that hasn't been touched on, and as Karen Niemeyer was saying too, she hasn't had a child yet or experience in the high school, and I think that makes a big difference, and I know it was for me too. Until you've been touched by or experienced certain services, one may not know about them. And I just want to talk about the often overlooked role of our guidance counselors. The American School of Counseling Association recommends best practices of 1 counselor for every 250 students, and that's about right where we are right now. And with this ratio, I would say, or at least in my experience with our counselor, they divide up by alphabet, and I have Ms. Zalisko, and because we're at the end of the alphabet. And I think with the whole department, their goal is to prepare each of our students for their post-high school plans, whether the student's goal is to attend a trade school, a college, join the military, or enter the workforce. And they do this by starting with our students in 8th grade. And they set up an appointment with the kids, and they set up a 4-year plan based on the child's future plans for after high school and their interests. And it's nice that we have the 2 counselors, because they're allowed to meet with our children 2 times at least for their freshman, sophomore, and junior years. They can make certain that our kids are on track with their plans, that they're getting all the prerequisites that are necessary that they need, and can also help them with any adjustments in interests or plans. And I know that sounds simple and straightforward, but if we went back to only employing 1 high school counselor, that counselor would be consumed by the mandatory testing and reporting that's required by legislation, and they would most likely only have time enough remaining to focus on seniors and some juniors to a lesser extent. And with a school of our size, we're big enough that we're now able to provide a nice offering of classes, a nice variety of classes, but we're small enough that our offerings are very limited in the number of sessions, as well as some may not even be offered every year. They may have to alternate years. And our having 2 counselors, they're able to really monitor our kids all through their 4 years, make certain prerequisites are taken, and they're on course.
Alicia, 30 seconds.
Okay. So basically, in summary, numbers talk, and our percentage of college-bound kids have increased from 77% and 95 to 92% last year. And the other 8%, 7 of the other 8% had solid post-high school plans of the military or a trade school. Thank you.
Tony, and you'll say your last name, please.
Tony Posidoni.
Gary Armstrong is next.
We've had two children, two daughters graduate from Westmont High School, and we moved out of the district, actually moved back in the district for high school because we wanted our children to go to this school, and we missed the community. We were only gone for a short time and realized that it was a mistake to have left. So just a couple things. I think by the people that are here that we care very deeply about the decisions that are made, because these decisions affect our children's lives and our future leaders. And I have a little bit of a concern when I see when the teachers as well as the board put down as one of their line items, which is a nice number, where you eliminate an entire sports program. To me, that sends a message that, we're looking at it as just a game or just something as a participation. I mean, at the high school, there's over 63% participation in the athletics and in the band and some of those other things. But the values that people learn from sport are more than just the game. I mean, you learn how to compete, you learn how to work through adversity, you learn how to keep your grades up and manage a busy schedule, you learn how to work with others, you learn how to strive for success, you learn how to better yourself. There's so many valuable assets that are learned from that. And the message that I guess that I'd like to say here is that, we're here because we care, and the decisions that are made greatly affect all of us. And I think you've heard the message that we all would like to participate. And you look at $55,000 or $80,000, and it's a huge number. But there are alternatives to getting those items eliminated from the budget as a deficit by raising fees, by doing other things. One of the larger school districts in the state right now is doing fundraiser. And I know I'm very intimate with what they're doing for that. I'm not going to get into any of the details right now, but there are alternatives like that. They have about 1,500 students in one of their schools, and they're passing out a fundraising packet at registration. So there are other ways of doing that. So, I'm willing to step up and do that. Now, I've been a victim of this economy. I had a 25-year career in the home building industry that, as we know, there's not much of an industry left. So that, happened a year ago. But I will do whatever I need to do for the betterment of what the children and my children and other children need to have. And to just arbitrarily say we're going to just cut this out, we're going to cut out an entire program. If you cut out freshman and sophomore sports, then there is no sports, because those children will not be able to compete at a higher level if they don't get the training, the development, and learn the values that they need to do. So there are alternatives. We're all willing to participate, and we have a lot in this country right now of what I like to call a government above the people, and I think that what we're asking for and what we're hoping that you are giving us is one of the people, because you were voted here, you were put here, and we are participating with you and willing to do whatever it takes. There are alternatives. There are ways to overcome this. Are we going to overcome the whole thing? No, I wish we could. I wish I could write you a check. I can't do that right now. But the thing is that we all have to work together to make sure that we get through this together, and there are brighter days, but we cannot forget the impact of the children, because the decisions we make will impact them exponentially for the rest of their lives. And we can't go back and just turn the dial back and change that. So we have to be very, very careful on how we decide and what we do, because if we make that mistake, it's going to affect all of us adversely and all of them forever. And I think that's a lot more than just a line item on a budget. So we have to look at all our alternatives. And you know what, if it's wage freezes, I know that one of the larger and a few of the larger school districts in the state are looking at that now. Nobody likes that, but you know what? It's a temporary thing. There are ways of fixing that. And if that's what it takes, collectively, a little of this, a little of that, to make it better for all of us so that our children benefit, that's what's important. And I hope that we all are looking at it that way. Thank you for your time.
Gary Armstrong, and then after that is Diane Saltwich. And just as an update, after that, we have 2 other people, unless there's anything else that's signed out there that I don't have. So just as an update, we're...
Hi, good evening. I'm Gary Armstrong. Really, I'm just going to touch on 2 points. One that's been mentioned, but I'm going to point out a couple more things about it. As it's been said, class size is very instrumental in the growth of a child. The budget cut is proposing that we allow the standard to be 28 kids in kindergarten through 2nd and 30 in grades 3, 4, and 5. Now, 3 years ago, we stood here and we were told that the class sizes were going to be 18 in the kindergarten and 24 in grades in the 5th grade. Okay, so telling us that it's only going to affect potentially 1 teacher or 1 classroom, I think it's at Miller, really isn't accurate because it's going to affect every classroom. So I ask you very much, think about that cut very hard. Please don't change the class sizes. Additionally, I've been attending the meetings, as you know, and really, you guys are in an impossible situation. I wouldn't want to be that. I wouldn't want to have to do that. But if I was, I'd want to make sure I was getting the most complete, most accurate information possible in order to make these cuts. And I'm just going to bring up 3 examples that I didn't do any research on them, just other than looking at pieces of paper. Last year when we went through this, the curriculum director's position was listed as $100,000 savings. At the first meeting this year, it said it was $135,000 savings. And then at a follow-up meeting, it said it was $66,000 of savings. Well, what's the real number? Earlier tonight, we talked about the nursing position. Are we really saving that money or not? Do we really know if it's going to make a difference in the overall budget or not? And additionally, somebody in the audience here gave me this information about the cell phones, and I had seen this too, and it was kind of striking. Originally, it said the cell phones were budgeted for $18,000 a year, mainly because for some reason the administrators don't want to have to carry 2 phones. But when we FOIA'd those bills actually added up to about $10,000 a year. So I'm not trying to ask for why is there an $8,000 discrepancy. I'm saying, board members, look at these numbers really good. Make sure they're accurate. Maybe what we need to do is what the village did. The village put together a group of people, they opened up the books, and they allowed this finance committee to come in and investigate everything to make sure that those numbers were 100% accurate. I would not want to have to cut somebody's job and then find out that the number I looked at was wrong. Thank you.
After Diane Saltwich is Tracy Volmers.
I'd like to provide some clarification on the issue with the cell phones. The FOIA request that I received was strictly for administrative cell phone bills. The FOIA request was not for all of the cell phone bills. The custodial staff also carry cell phones, and we do have one in the minibus. So the bills that were FOIA'd was not all-inclusive of all the cell phones district-wide. So the $18,000 budget number is accurate. If somebody wants to FOIA the rest of the bills, I'd be happy to provide them.
Hi, my name's Diane Salwish. I have 3 kids. My oldest 2 haven't attended 201 since kindergarten. They graduated from the Westmont High School in 2007 and 2009. My youngest is presently in 6th grade. Given the 9-year age span between my oldest and youngest, I can attest to the huge advances in the district's technology curriculum. And I did chat with 3 out of the 4 media specialists, so I've touched all levels. Each student must be prepared to either enter college or the workplace. If our students are to continue on and be successful, they need to be introduced to the most cutting-edge technology to be able to integrate themselves into their careers. My daughter's a freshman at NIU. Professors pass out a syllabus with the semester research project requiring PowerPoint, Wiki, as well as informational web-based survey. It's imperative that our college-bound students leave the Westmont High School with the technology tools in order to be successful. Skills taught by our media specialists are not just for college-bound students either. Technology is being integrated into every trade and every discipline. Back when I studied dental hygiene, I had no idea how much technology would be coming into a central element of our patient services. Our students need to leave Westmont High School ready to compete no matter what path they take. In the past, as a district, we've been criticized for academic achievement. Great progress has been made in the last 6 to 8 years in the district's integration of technology in the classroom and as an essential support tool for our students. Our academic achievements can directly be attributed to the integrated technology curriculum. Having only a part-time media specialist in each building would then take learning down to a survival mode. The students are the ones that would truly suffer. The Media Center has changed drastically from the old library that you went to check out books and maybe hear a story. It is now used by 2,500 to 3,000 students in the high school prior to school, during lunch, study halls, and also after school during a 1-month period. This is for research, homework, and collaboration. These numbers for the high school media center alone, they do not include the classes that are used on a daily basis. There is a 30% of our students that are on reduced lunch program, which means they may actually have a lesser chance of having the extra technology that they would have, the resources to be used at home. Teachers utilize the Media Center for lesson plan, guided research, labs, troubleshooting, and training. There will be a technology divide among our district and the surrounding districts, which put our children at a disadvantage. When something goes wrong with a program or a computer, all the work comes to a completely stop and until it's able to be fixed, corrected, or updated. The media specialist is essential with curriculum between staff members and the administration. One other thing, I do have strong feelings about the industrial arts program that was also on the hit list. A lot of our students aren't a lot of students that come here aren't academically inclined in certain areas, maybe English, it may be science. Some can't find their little niche, but they find it in the industrial arts area, the hands-on training, things that they may find an interest in to either do TCD or a trade down the line. It's been shown that this also develops a more rounded person in general and helps perform better academically. We as parents don't mind kicking in more for sports, clubs, labs, shops, or whatever the money is spent throughout the district. It should be spent wisely with a lot of thought behind it. I remember being at South School. My oldest 2 children were in kindergarten and 2nd grade, never thinking beyond the elementary doors, never thinking the day of graduation from either the junior high or the high school. It comes very quick, it seems like yesterday. What our district decides to cut will affect our children from years to come, not just ones that are here today, the ones that'll be coming up even from kindergarten. They'll be here sooner than you think. I love the district's motto, small schools with large opportunities. I truly hope it continues. We have amazing students. Thank you for your time.
Tracy Vollmers, and then Kim Weiss.
Hi, my name is Tracy Vollmers. I am a Manning parent, and I'm also a Westmont alum. I was here during the dreaded 1985, and I will say, as an elementary school student, I don't really remember that happening so well, but I've heard bad things. In watching the recent school board meetings, reading all the information, and listening to what has been discussed, I feel that there's one key component missing from much of it. It seems as though the Board of Education has lost sight of who we're here for. We're here for the students of Community Unit School District 201. We should be focused on doing everything possible to make cuts that will affect the students and their learning in the least possible way. The WTA has come up with a list of proposed cuts that achieves this goal. The WTA is made up of the people who know our students best and on a personal level. I believe that the WTA is looking out for our focus, the students. Although we have been told numerous times that no cuts have been approved, parents of Manning learned today that 2 RAP staff members have received pink slips. Also, to propose combining the certified librarians in the elementary schools is preposterous. Our librarians provide direct instruction to our students twice a week on topics such as doing research through books and the internet, as well as giving the students opportunities to check out grade-appropriate reading materials. They also support the curriculum at every grade level, assisting with projects, pulling groups of books for classrooms, etc. Between the elimination of the RAP teachers and the decrease of certified librarian, how is our district fostering lifelong readers and providing the foundation of all learning? Karen Niemeyer mentioned Title I money, and I learned a fact last night about Title I money. Did you know that in the last 8 years, we've only gotten Title I money 2 times? Yet at one of the meetings, it was stated that having grade level centers would certainly eliminate our chance of receiving Title I money. As it stands, there's only a 25% chance that a school in our district would qualify as it is. I just thought this information was important to share. Thank you to everyone who has addressed the class size, and I will reiterate that increasing class size will significantly and negatively impact our children. In the 3 years in this district, I have seen my children grow and flourish thanks to the outstanding teachers at Manning School. I don't envy the board the difficult decisions that have to be made. Thank you for letting me speak today.
Kim Weiss?
Maureen, I'm sorry, Maureen.
Just to clarify,
let's
we've
clarify
gotten
the
Title I
money
every year for at least the past 5 years.
For the 6 years I've been here, yeah. So,
Yeah, I don't know who told you we don't get Title I money every year, but that would be inaccurate.
Hi, I'm Kim Weiss, and I have 3 kids in this district, 1 in junior high and 2 in the high school. And I'm was concerned about the elimination of the sports and the freshman, sophomore. I just think that would be really hard for someone. I have a son who plays baseball, football, to go in there and play as a junior and not play the prior 2 years. You could actually get hurt. You would have no confidence. And it is a real big motivator to have your kids go to school because they have a game or whatever the reason is. And I'd be willing to increase fees or have fundraisers. I think it's really important to have the freshmen, sophomores, because that promotes the rest of the sports in the junior and senior year. And also the clubs, getting rid of every club and every sport at the junior high too. We'd be willing to participate in extra fees, and if we could have fundraiser and, if there's enough students willing to participate, that should be a reason to have a club or sport. And that's all I want to say. Thank you.
Has anyone not signed up that wanted to speak? Because I have. Is it there now? Thank you.
My name is Tim Herman. I'm a parent of a first grader at Miller School. A lot has been said today about the cuts that are proposed to be made here in this district. My daughter is just starting her journey in the district, and other parents do have a lot more experience in this. I'd like to reiterate what some of the other people said today about the sacrifices that need to be made. And I think that's really the big word here, is that everybody has to make sacrifices. And as one of, or two of the other speakers here today said, this public packet was devoid of sacrifices that need to be made, in my opinion, by the teachers. And I think that's part of the solution. I think the teachers really, when this negotiation comes up, also need to make those sacrifices. And as we heard, even if there's a freeze for 1 year, we save $360,000. If the teachers make a sacrifice and even take an additional 1% cut in a salary for 1 or 2 years, we could solve this and not have to cut anything. And so I guess I just implore the teachers, when they enter these negotiations, to think about the students and think about all of the cuts that are proposed and how we can solve that, and to be part of the solution. Thank you.
Is there anyone else?
I have a letter. Oh. She speak again, she's asking.
She wants to speak about boosters.
Actually, I just wanted to, as I sit and listen to everyone talk and make suggestions, I have been a part of the PTOs at all of the buildings, well, the Manning, the junior high, and the booster clubs here at the high school, the athletic booster club and the band booster club. And I'd like to employ the parents that are here. That's a great way for people to help out. The PTOs fund things. They're asked to give money. The booster clubs at the high school, the band boosters, do a ton of support for the band program. We've heard about the success, like going to Super State. That is an incredible achievement for the band program. The athletic booster club here, if you buy a hamburger at the, we don't make hamburgers. Pulled pork, if you buy Uncle Bub's, we take all of the money, all the profit that we make. We are looking at a football, a track, scoreboard right now, financing it to help out, to do things. We look at safety issues, we fund things that the kids can't have. And that is a great way for parents to help out, to be active, to use their talents, their time. And it's been great for me, so I would encourage everyone. This would be a great way to help the district. Thanks.
Linda, did you want to?
Thank you. Yes, I was handed a letter from a woman who couldn't be here tonight. Her name is Elizabeth Grogan. She has a daughter who's a sophomore here at the high school. And I'd appreciate it if you'd let me read the letter. I'm writing to share my experience with the reading program presently at Manning School, and specifically about Miss Deb Hinman, as she is the educator who I had interaction with. In these times where cuts need to be made to the budget, I realize that there are going to have to be some heart-rending decisions to make. However, the idea of cutting staff or programming from the award-winning reading program in place at Manning would be incredibly pound-wise and penny-foolish. A very brief background. My daughter attended South Elementary School from K to 4th grade. At that time, I made the decision to change her to Manning School in order to take advantage of the outstanding and cutting-edge reading program in place there. This was done after much research and much reading about my daughter's specific learning disability. At that time, she had actually regressed in her reading ability and entered the 5th grade reading at the beginning 2nd grade level. This was after having had an IEP in place since the start of the 1st grade, having interventions done by the special ed teacher at South, who was not a certified reading teacher and whose background was with multi-needs children, and also private tutoring for 3 years. Her standardized test scores were showing a typical pattern of a wide variation, but her reading scores were just about as bad as they could be, something like the 3rd percentile in portions of the test. She was using all kinds of expensive interventions and taking up a lot of the special ed's teacher's time. Fast forward. After 1 year in the reading program at Manning, she was reading in the 6th to 7th grade level, still needing some accommodations but becoming more and more independent each week. When she went into the junior high, the program was continued for a short time by a teacher who had actually attended classes to learn the methods used by the program at Manning. Although Amy only made use of this program for a short time, I believe that continuity was another piece in the puzzle that helped her toward her goals. I strongly believe that the reading program at Manning Elementary is not only life-altering for the students it serves, but in the longer run ends up saving countless dollars. At this time, the only accommodations that Amy really utilizes is extended times on tests, which should not cost the district anything. In human terms, this child who faces a potential future of being virtually illiterate is now achieving alongside her non-LD peers. She has made the dean's list every quarter in high school, scores very high on the standardized testing, using only extended time where appropriate, and this Thursday evening will be inducted into the National Honor Society. I do not have figures to show how many other students who also owe their future academic success to this program, but I do know that every child who had its benefit is the better off for it. Do I have any time left? It's a long letter. I think.
The timer, so keep
Oh,
going.
okay. Do you want me to finish?
I will say that we have 5 minutes of tape left, and then we run out
Okay,
and we have to
so
start another one.
basically, you know, I think I'll stop. Everybody gets the idea that it's about the reading program. Okay.
And I will very briefly read a letter, too. There was a woman who gave me a letter last night who couldn't be here. I've given a copy to every board member. It's 2 paragraphs. I'll try to be quick. I'm writing to express my thoughts as a parent in your school district concerning the current budget issues. I understand that you all, as school board members, are facing many difficult decisions. I would like you all to know, as a parent, I am very concerned about the potential academic opportunities my children will have in our district. I have read the potential budget cut list, and I would like to strongly protest the elimination of 3rd grade accelerated math at the elementary schools. I believe that all of our children in our district that require specialized curriculum deserve it. Be it the child who is struggling or the child who is gifted, they both require particular attention. And I am sure that you would all agree with me in saying that the earlier we begin to enrich our children's academic progress, the better they will learn and grow. Thank you for your consideration in this matter. Nicole Ocon. Does any board members have anything else to add before we adjourn?
I would just, you know what, I'm sorry. Yeah. I really want to thank everybody for how incredibly prepared everybody was tonight with their thoughts, and for how polite you were to the board, and how understanding you all seem to be about the difficult nature of the decisions we face. I'm very, very appreciative of that from all of you who spoke, so thank you.
Yes. And I would
gives you a clap.
And I would also like to say thank you, and please stay involved, and we appreciate you taking this time to come. And please stay tuned, because we're going to be having more discussions. Thank you. The next board meeting is April 27th, Tuesday night, back at the Village. And the chair will entertain a motion to enter closed session for the purpose of I'm sorry, did someone have anything else? For discussing confidential personnel issues and collective bargaining. Roll call, please.
Mr. Charleston?
Yes.
Mrs. Charlton?
Yes.
Ms. Kelly?
Yes.
Mrs. Lubeck?
Yes.
Mr. Price?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas? Ms. Casey?
Yes.
Yes. And there will not be a vote. Thank you.